Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Shinigami, a double god, younger brother Aizen. Chapter 31. Ha 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 ha. This joke you made is not funny at all. Did the sword just now make you arrogant, thinking that the captain of Gote 13 is only at this level? After Hiriko Shinji was slightly taken aback, he couldn't help laughing angrily. How long? He almost forgot how long he had not been underestimated so much. The captain of Gote 13. I don't know if there is only this level. I know, Captain Shinji, you're nothing more than that. Okay, you can leave, and cherish the last 27 days. After all, this is your last time as the captain of the 5th team. Remember the feeling when you were in office. After retiring, it will be a good time to reflect on it. Wonderful experience. Lan Yan said casually. Graduate in 1 month, learn Bankai in 1 month, challenge Captain Guard in 1 month. Okay, I'll wait for you to see if you can bring Bankai to me in a month. Hiriko Shinji's face changed slightly, but he smiled immediately. It's just Bankai, how difficult it can be. Not to mention. No need for Bankai to defeat you. Lan Yan paused every word, and his voice revealed an unquestionable and awe-inspiring haki that made people involuntarily believe. Okay, I'll wait for you at the 5th team sweeping the couch. I hope you are not the kind of person who only talks big. Otherwise, it would be a waste of my expectations for you this month. The smile on Hiriko Shinji's face gradually froze, then he turned around and disappeared from everyone's sight without looking back. Lan Yan, are you really going to graduate a month early and challenge Hiriko Shinji? This is no joke. Let's not talk about the challenge in advance, let's talk about graduating early. Spiritual Arts Academy has different graduation requirements for students in each class. As soon as Hiriko Shinji walked away, Shiba said with a serious face. 3rd class, you only need to master the basic chopping, punching, walking, ghost, even if Zanpakuto is not yet Shikai, you can still graduate. 2nd class, not only must master chopping, punching, walking, and ghosts, but also be able to use Kido below 40, and Shikai who comprehend Zanpakuto. As for the 1st class you are in, on the basis of the graduation requirements of the 2nd class, you need to be able to use Kido under the number 80, of course, to sing completely. His words made everyone present realize the difficulty of graduation. But yes, after all, the 1st class is also called the captain's class. The Shinigami who come out of the 1st class, as long as they don't die, basically become the captain of the court, or the captain of the big Kido, and they are also the best among the vice captains. That's not too difficult for Lan Yan. Senior Yixin, you may not know that just now Lan Yan used No. 81 Bakudo to block Hiriko Shinji's sword pressure on Aizen, and he still gave up the chant. Plus, he has mastered Shikai now, wouldn't he be able to graduate today? Before Lan Yan could speak, Shihuin Yoruichi spoke first. When she said that, everyone's eyes widened. Only then did everyone react. Lan Yan, who entered Spiritual Arts Academy with himself and others, only took 3 days to meet the requirements for graduating from the 1st class. Listen, I'm talking about Kido up to 80, besides Bakudo, there's Hado. You have also taken the Kido class, so you should all know that Bakudo is far less difficult than Hado of the same level. You can give up singing Bakudo that uses the number 80, but it doesn't mean that you can completely sing the one that uses the number 80. Hado. Lan Yan, can you do it? Shiba listened intently, and couldn't help but look sideways at Lan Yan. Your Kido is very dissatisfied with Shiba's single-minded words, and dares to despise him. Didn't he know that he had already practiced the full singing version of Hado's 88 Flying Dragon Beating Thieves and Shocking Thunder Cannon last night? After Lan Yan heard the voice from his ear, he immediately found that his Kido had improved again. Before Kido jumps out to speak, I can only cast Hado below 80 if I fully chant, and I can only cast Hado below 70 if I abandon chant. After all, he has only been in school for 2 or 3 days. The Kido class was only taught once. Today's achievements are all due to the success of their own Kido. Lan Yan, where are you going? Seeing that Lan Yan didn't say a word, Shiba suddenly turned around and walked towards the gate of Junyang Kendo Gym, and couldn't help asking. He thought that his words made this unprecedented genius feel the pressure. Lan Yan, Shihuin Yoruichi also shouted, but still no response. Yoruichi, and Isshin-sensei, don't worry, the answer will come soon. The corners of Aizen's mouth twitched slightly, and he gave a chuckle. As if he understood something, he took the lead to follow Lan Yan's back and walked towards the door. Seeing this, the others followed suit out of curiosity and worry. Soon, following behind Lan Yan, everyone came to the Kido training ground. At this time, in the Kido training ground, there are teachers from other classes leading the students to practice Kido below number 10. Captain Yixin, if I remember correctly, you should be taking Kendo lessons today, right? Seeing Captain Yixin approaching, Teacher Kido immediately stepped forward to inquire, his tone full of respect. Don't look at Shiba, who is only a substitute teacher, but he is the captain of Gote 13 who can't help others. As long as you don't meet the patriarchs of the 4 great nobles in Central 46, in Seraiti, any captain is like a crab, walking sideways. That's right. It's just that this student of mine wants to borrow your training ground for a while, just for a while. I don't know if it's convenient. Shiba rubbed his hair intently, not knowing how to explain it. Of course it's convenient. Gather. All retreat to the outside of the training ground. Teacher Kido saw that Shiba was focused on speaking so nicely, so of course he would not be ignorant of compliments, so he immediately ordered all the students who were contacting Kido to gather and let the training ground out. How is this going? Isn't that the chief of our school? That is recognized as the strongest genius of the Spiritual Arts Academy since 2000. What is Lan Yan doing here? It should be practicing Kido. Look, that's Captain Isshin of Gote 13, even he's here. Seeing Lan Yan stepping into the Kido training ground, a group of students who were still practicing just now looked at him. They stretched their necks one by one, their faces full of curiosity. Teacher Yixin, if you break the Kido pile, you don't need compensation, right? Lan Yan glanced at the human-shaped wooden stake standing 30 meters away. Break it, Lan Yan, don't think he looks like a piece of wood, you really think it's made of wood. That's the Technology Development Bureau and the captain of the 12th Division. Shutara Senju Maru specially made the Kido pile for Spiritual Arts Academy. It not only has the function of absorbing Reiatsu, but also mixed with murderous stone as a material. Let's put it this way, unless it's a Shinigami at the captain's level who fully casts a high-level Hado above 80, otherwise, it's impossible to even leave a trace on it. After Shiba listened intently, he couldn't help laughing. It's like hearing someone ask, will Central 46 question him if he killed Yamamoto Motoinagi Shigekuni? Just say, do you want to pay for the damage? Lan Yan ignored Shiba's single-minded teasing. Well, if you really accidentally break the Kido pile, I'll pay you to pay for it. Shiba said boldly. Anyway, this kind of thing will never happen. At least not now. If Lan Yan was being asked to practice for a few more months, he would definitely not be in the sea, but at this time, it doesn't matter. Then I would like to thank Teacher Yixin for his generosity. Lan Yan nodded, and before Shiba could open his mouth, he raised his right hand and pointed his palm at the Kido pile 30 meters away. 73 of Hado. Double Lotus Kengo Pendant. As each word is uttered, the aura trembling in the surrounding air becomes more obvious. The moment the word, falling, was spread, Lan Yan's palm burst out with an extremely dazzling blue light, and the blazing high temperature spread in all directions, and then a pillar of azure blue fire gushed out, like a streamer piercing the sky, and shot to the sky in an instant. Kido pile, submerge it. Bang! A loud noise like thunder roared. The blue-hot Reiatsu flame is burning. Since it was invented, it has never been shaken by any student. It is enough to withstand Kido below captain level Shinigami number 70, and the Kido pile, which is not damaged at all, is shaking violently at this moment, and shocking lines are cracked on the surface. No way. How did he become the Hado of No. 73? Also, give up singing. Shiba opened his mouth with all his heart, feeling a little regretful in his heart. He had just pushed himself up, and he actually said that he would pay Kido piles in Heiko. Oh my god, what did I see? That's Hado's 73 Shuanglian Kengo pendant. Abandoning the chant, there is still such power. Could it be that the Lord Spirit King was reincarnated? The students watching on one side were all dumbfounded by the shock. When did this happen? He's only been in touch with Kido for 2 days, right? It's just a monster. Shihuin Yoruichi, Urahara Kazuki, Tessai Tsukubishi, etc. When everyone looked at Lan Yan, they all looked at him like a monster. Has it reached this point? Now I can only give up chanting and cast Hado's 58 Tianlin. Although Aizen had been mentally prepared for a long time, when he saw this scene, there was still a flash of shock in his eyes under the frame mirror. Hado of 58 and 73. It seems that there is a difference of 15 numbers, but in fact it is a difference of 2 waterlines. For Hado, there is a threshold for every 10 numbers. To be able to abandon the chant without diminishing its power is something that only Gotei 13's Shinigami captain can do. As for Hado on the 80th, any Shinigami captain can basically give up the chant and use it, but if the power is not reduced while giving up the chant, it is not something that an ordinary captain can do. Looking at Gotei 13, that's what the captain of the second tier can do. Such as Unohana Retsu, Shutara Senjumaru, Kyoraku Shunsui, Jashiro Yukitaki, and Kuchiki Yinling, these 5 people can do it. Number 90 and above. Never mind. Not to mention abandoning the chant, the power is still undiminished, as long as you can keep a quarter, or even a fifth, of the Hado when you abandon the chant, that is an extremely powerful existence. Even when Aizen defected from the Soul Society, his strength was already at the peak of Shinigami, but under normal circumstances, without Shikai or Bankai, he can only retain 1/3 of Hado when he casts number 90 power. This is the threshold of Kido. Number 10 a threshold. Every threshold represents an insurmountable height. Fortunately, it wasn't broken. Seeing the flames of Reiatsu dissipate with all his heart, Shiba breathed a sigh of relief when the Kido pile was still standing like broken porcelain with cracks all over it. If it is cracked, although it will cost money to repair it, it is much cheaper than cracking. After all, it's only Hado of number 73. Unless my Reiatsu can be doubled from the current base, and have the strength of an 18-car punch, otherwise, it is impossible to break it. However, Bankai can do it. Seeing this, Lan Yan frowned slightly, as if he was a little dissatisfied with his own strength. Enrolled in Spiritual Arts Academy and practiced for 3 days. He could only give up the chant and cast Hado below number 73. My Kido has been a bit slack in recent practice. It seems that I should pay more attention to the progress of Zanpakuto recently. After all, Zanpakuto is the root of Shinigami. Your Kido said that only Kido is the strongest power of Shinigami. Also, he wants to correct me. He has been practicing very diligently recently and has not slacked off. Sing the version, as long as you have hands, it's just that he keeps a low profile and doesn't talk about it. After Lan Yan noticed that his Kido level had improved by leaps and bounds again, a smile flashed across his eyes. After this period of observation, he has a certain understanding of the level and personality of his group of abilities. Roughly Zanpakuto looks down on chopping, punching, walking, and ghosts. Kido expressed dissatisfaction and wanted to be equal to Zanpakuto. Kendo means that one's life is not weaker than others. Only Reiatsu, who is really low-key, just wants to work hard secretly and amaze everyone. In a word, everyone seems to overwhelm the other. If you want to handle Kido, it's easy. Say Zanpakuto can do it, but he can't. This is not. I just said in my heart that I should pay more attention to Zanpakuto, and Kido couldn't sit still on the spot. I don't know whether it was a breakthrough in front of the battle, or whether it was hidden. In short, it squeezed Hado's 78th Zanwalin out on the spot. The other side. Just as Shiba was secretly rejoicing that the Kido pile was not blown, he suddenly heard Lan Yan's voice in his ear. Hado's 78 cutting the flower wheel. Shiba turned his neck a little stiffly, staring at Lan Yan in a daze. I saw him fold his 5 fingers together and make a knife with his hand. An arc-shaped Reiatsu slash came out across the air, like a huge crescent moon, flew out through the air, and slashed directly on the Kido stake. Click. Reiatsu slashed Chigan and sank in, flashing past the Kido stake. Immediately afterwards, the Kido pile, which was already full of cracks, instantly split into 2, and after falling to the ground, it shattered into countless pieces on the spot. Give up the chant. Even Hado on the 78th can do it. This kind of power is no more than that of most court captains. Shiba Yixin's expression was uncertain. I feel sorry for my wallet, but also amazed by Lan Yan's Kido cultivation. 3 days. How long has it been since a person who has been in contact with Kido for less than 3 days has actually attained accomplishments in Kido, catching up with Captain Shinigami who has practiced for hundreds, even hundreds of years? At this moment, he suddenly realized a truth. The gap between Shinigami and Shinigami is really bigger than the gap between Shinigami and dog. He couldn't imagine how high Lan Yan would reach if he practiced for 10 or 8 years, no, a year or so. 2. Strong. Shihoin Yoruichi spoke intermittently, and when he looked at Lan Yan, his beautiful eyes sparkled. As the young patriarch of Shihuin, possesses unparalleled Shunpo talent. Noble background, great strength, outstanding appearance. All these add up to create what Sui Feng said is, noble and gorgeous, and possesses terrifying strength. This also makes her more or less eye-catching. Those who are idle cannot enter her field of vision at all. Even Byakuya Kuchiki, if it wasn't her childhood playmate and the young head of the Kuchiki family, it would be hard to be seen by her. But in front of Lan Yan, the longer the acquaintance time, the more ordinary Shihuin Yoruichi felt. The young patriarch of Shihuin. Shunpo's talent is unmatched. Outstanding appearance and figure. Everything seems so unpretentious. There is even an illusion that when I get along with Lan Yan, the other party is a nobleman and I am a commoner. The confusion of identity made her want to get closer to this man. This is his strength. It's come that far. Can I still catch up? Byakuya Kuchiki kept asking herself. Her hands under the cuffs had already clenched into fists. After witnessing Lan Yan abandoning the chanting and casting the 78 Hado, and the power is not lower than that of the Shinigami at the captain's level, he even had an illusion. During the years I have been practicing since I was a child, it is like practicing on dogs. Monster. Everyone is from Rukongai, and they have only been enrolled for 3 days. Why is there such a big gap? We are still practicing number 10 Hado here, and he has been able to give up singing and use the number 78 high-level Hado. With such strength, even a vice-captain level Shinigami is not as good as Lan Yan. Witnessing Lan Yan abandoning his chanting one after another and using a Hado who is more advanced than the last, the students in the same spiritual arts academy were present, but the students in different classes were all stunned by the shock. If Lan Yan was of noble origin and had received the highest Shinigami training since childhood, they would have accepted it relatively calmly. But both of them are from Rukongai, and both of them have been in school for 3 days, and everyone else is almost ready to be the captain of the court. Teacher Yixin, what do you think? Lan Yan ignored the amazed surroundings and the awe-inspiring gazes from all directions, and walked up to Shiba Yixin. After becoming the captain, you have to treat me to dinner. This Kido pile is so expensive. Shiba stared at Lan Yan wholeheartedly, and after a while, suddenly laughed and cursed. Must. Lan Yan chuckled and nodded. However, don't get too complacent. Kido, Kendo, and Reiatsu, you have passed the test. But what about white hits and Shunpo? You don't know it yet. Shiba was worried that Lan Yan would be overconfident and underestimate the captain of the court guard, so he immediately put away his smile and said solemnly. Anal, I can't say anything else, but white hits and Shunpo are my strengths. Lan Yan, I can teach you Shunpo, and I guarantee that you will not let Hiriko Shinji take advantage of Shunpo. Shihuin Yoruichi patting the towering flatbread. Demon Cat, you don't intend to teach him the secret footwork, do you? Byakuya Kuchiki couldn't help but said. I can teach, why can't he? Shihuin Yoruichi said confidently. Byakuya Kuchiki was speechless. Can this be the same? The Shihuin family and the Kuchiki family are the same 4 nobles, and they are on equal footing. In addition, he and Shihuin Yoruichi's generation, because they are childhood playmates, the relationship is far closer than the past few 10,000 years. He learned the secret footwork from Shihuin Yoruichi today, and the Kuchiki family will naturally be in another place tomorrow, allowing Shihuin Yoruichi to learn the secret technique of the Kuchiki family. Which will make Shihuin Yoruichi suffer. If your father knows, he will thank you. Shiba shook his head wholeheartedly. Of course. Shihuin Yoruichi didn't know whether he really didn't understand Shiba's words, or he pretended not to understand. Not only was he not embarrassed, but he was also smiling, with a hint of complacency. No need, Yoruichi. I just take Shunpo class normally. After all, the opponent is only Hiriko Shinji. The basic shunpo taught by Spiritual Arts Academy is enough. Lan Yan's words made the uninformed feel arrogant, but after witnessing his kendo that nailed Hiriko Shinji to the wall with one sword, instead of feeling arrogant, they took it for granted. Plus his Kido attainments. It's really hard to say a word of rebuttal. It's okay to cut the fist and walk away the ghost. The key is Bankai. This is the most fundamental and strongest power of Shinigami. Shiba is not worried that Zonquan Zugi will drag Lan Yan back. What really caught his attention was Bankai. Before Urahara Kazuki invented the body, even the genius Shinigami of the Four Nobles would have to practice for decades to become Bankai. As for Chojiro Sasaki, before challenging Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni, he already had good strength, and he was one step away from Bankai. This is the condition for 1 month to practice Bankai. But what about Lan Yan? Back and forth, I have only practiced for 3 days. If you want to practice Bankai within a month, even if Kurosaki Ichigo is crazy about it, it is far from being possible without turning your body. Zanpakuto is further liberated on the basis of Shikai, reaching the realm of Bankai, and the strength of Reiatsu will increase 5 to 10 times on the basis of Shikai. Just talking about Reiatsu's strength, once Hiriko Shinji uses Bankai, Reiatsu can instantly exceed 3 to 5 times. Not to mention, Bankai's own ability will be far stronger than Shikai's ability. But Bankai is not as easy to practice as Zonquan Zugi, and there is a complete method of cultivation. Everything depends on sword zen and strength. As far as I know, from the beginning of contact with Shinigami cultivation, to Bankai, the Soul Society has known the fastest record for practicing Bankai is also 10 years. What Shiba didn't know with all his heart was that when he said this, Lan Yan rarely appeared, and Reiatsu, who had always been adhering to the purpose of practicing quietly and then surprising everyone, finally couldn't help it. 10 years. Your Zanpakuto snorts and says, trash. She said that she can comprehend Bankai in just 3 days, and fully master Bankai in half a month. Who dares to claim to be stronger than him? Your Reiatsu said that now he is 10 chariots, find out, give him another 10 days and a half months, it is no problem to reach 18 chariots. Lan Yan couldn't help but glance at Shiba wholeheartedly. As expected of Yichigu's father, he really knows how to cheat. It doesn't matter if my own Zanpakuto can't sit still, even Reiatsu can't help but jump out and hang out on the spot. You know, among his many abilities, Reiatsu is the most low-key. During the 3 days of enrollment, I only came out once or twice. Unlike Kido and Kendo, who pop out from time to time to brush up their presence. But now, Zanpakuto and Reiatsu both came out to hang out because of Shiba's single-minded babble. That was before. Lan Yan didn't care about what Shiba insisted that the Soul Society's fastest record for practicing Bankai was 10 years. No one knows better than he how proud his Zanpakuto is. Now that I put down my rhetoric and said that it takes 3 days to comprehend Bankai, half a month ago to fully master other Shinigami Bankai that needs to be practiced for decades, then it will definitely only be advanced, and will never be delayed. Haven't you touched Bankai's threshold already? Right, your Zanpakuto will manifest itself and drag you into the spiritual space to talk. Even if you voluntarily surrender to you, it is not impossible. Seeing what Lan Yan said with all his heart, Shiba couldn't help suspecting that the monster in front of him had touched Bankai's threshold. And, it's kind of reasonable. After 27 days, won't you know? At that time, I have to trouble teacher Yixin with something. Borrow 200 Shinigami players to support me and act as an audience by the way. Lan Yan smiled and didn't elaborate on Bankai's topic. Bankai's threshold. Does this kind of thing still need him to practice? No matter how rich Shiba's imagination is, it is impossible to guess that Zanpakuto's Bankai doesn't need him to worry about at all. His Zanpakuto candle yin will form itself into a Bankai, and when fully mastered, will be forced into his hand. You're really afraid that Hiriko will regret it if he loses. Shiba wholeheartedly felt the awe-inspiring confidence revealed in Lan Yan's words, and he was also amazed in his heart. For 99% of the Shinigami, Captain Goatee, that is an insurmountable mountain. But the black-haired boy in front of him didn't pay attention to the captain at all. Even, it is just regarded as a must-pass scenery on the road of Shinigami. Stop for a while, wait and see, and then step over. How come? Isn't that what you said, Teacher Yixin? You need to defeat a guard captain under the witness of 200 Shinigami before you can replace him. Then, only Teacher Yixin can help you with this favor, and only you are willing to help. Lan Yan said so, but in his heart he was sure that Hiriko Shinji would really do it. After all, just rushed at the opponent, just aware of the danger of Aizen, so he couldn't wait to rush over, as the captain of the guard, constantly exerting pressure and constantly targeting Aizen. This is a court captain with extremely flexible means and bottom line. What can't be done? Stop hating me. I can bring you 200 Shinigami, but you have to promise me one thing. Keep Hiriko alive as long as possible. Shiba's words were astonishing. Shihuin Yoruichi, Komamura Sajin and others on one side couldn't help being stunned. What does this mean? Do you think Hiriko Shinji must lose? Teacher Yixin, you shouldn't be looking for me, you should be looking for Captain Hiriko. Lan Yan spread his hands. Lan Yan, can you agree to the teacher's request? I let you keep him alive, not just for him, but also for you. Although it is innocent to kill Captain Gote in the duel for the position of captain, but it is the 5th division, it is not that this Soul Society can only keep one Kenpachi's 11th division, and Hiriko Shinji is in Gote 13. Lee has a lot of prestige and contacts. If you kill him, no matter the captain, vice captain, or the chief captain who is close to him will have opinions on you, which will be very detrimental to your future development. Of course Shiba Yixin knew that Hiriko Shinji was responsible for all of this, but he couldn't help it. He couldn't convince Hiriko Shinji, so he could only start with his own students. We'll see, Lan Yan said noncommittally. Seeing this wholeheartedly, Shiba didn't force Lan Yan to agree. His relationship with Hiriko Shinji isn't that great either, so forget it. For the sake of his colleagues, he thought he had done enough. After class, under the watchful eyes of Shiba Yixin, Shihuin Yoruichi and others, Lan Yan and Aizen left the Junyang Kendo Hall and walked towards the dormitory. Certainly, this is what Aizen let them do. In fact, the two never left the Kendo gym from the beginning to the end. It really caught a big fish. And not one. There are a group of people following him. Lan Yan sat on the steps of the Kendo Hall, leaning back against the wall in a casual posture. This is an inevitable thing. Saraiti has existed for thousands of years and has stood firm. Naturally, there will not be even one person who can see my disguise. Unfortunately, what he sees is only what I want him to see, and what I want him to guard against is also what I want him to guard against. Aizen smiled lightly. Fortunately, the teachers and students of the entire Spiritual Arts Academy are under the shadow of his Kyoka Suigetsu at this time. Otherwise, once the conversation between the two is heard and spread, it will definitely cause an uproar. Especially Hiriko Shinji. His perception, his appearance, and his targeting were all at the mercy of others from the beginning to the end. Indeed, Hiriko Shinji is quite accurate in seeing people, but not accurate enough. He can only see you, but not me. I never thought that it wasn't he who chose us, but we chose him. Since yesterday, I cast Kyoka Suigetsu on the teachers and students of Spiritual Arts Academy, just to attract him. The amount of information revealed by Lan Yan's words is even more frightening. It wasn't that Hiriko Shinji found them and came to them, but they chose Hiriko Shinji. Since it is confirmed that he will be the factor that hinders us, let's get rid of him, along with those captains who are friendly with him. Of course, as you said, even a piece of toilet paper and a pair of underwear have their own functions, let alone a captain of the court guard. Brother, you can just take away his 5th team, and I will use him for other purposes. Aizen's tone was extremely calm. It was as if, between his few words, it was not a guard captain, but an ant crawling on the side of the road that decided life and death. Experiment. When Lan Yan heard this, he immediately understood Aizen's plan. Yeah, I've been looking through the Spiritual Arts Academy library these days, and I've also asked Shiba Isshin and Jashiro Yukitaki. Shinigami's Reiatsu will enter a plateau period after passing a certain stage, with very slow growth, and finally enter a period of 10 years, 100 years, or even hundreds of thousands of years without growth bottlenecks. It's not just Reiatsu, but Zanpakuto, Kendo, Kido, Shunpo, and White Hits will also have such a bottleneck. Aizen showed a rare serious look. Take Reiatsu as an example. I estimate that if I am 10 times as big as I am now, I will fall into a plateau, and my growth will become extremely slow later. This is the boundary that all Shinigami have, and it can only be broken by external force. Of course, the same should be true for Shu. Although after Bankai, Reiatsu will improve by 5 to 10 times on this basis, but he can't make any further progress, and it doesn't make any sense at all. There was a trace of dissatisfaction in his words. It was dissatisfaction with oneself for not being able to continue to pursue higher realms. Oh, that's 60 boxers. Lan Yan nodded and said casually. He was a little curious whether his Reiatsu would enter a plateau and grow extremely slowly like Aizen after he reached 60 boxing. 60 cars. Aizen was slightly taken aback when he heard this. He is also well read, and has searched the library of Spiritual Arts Academy, but he has never heard of Reiatsu's statement. I met a Shinigami captain named Muguruma Kensai. Among the captains, in terms of Reiatsu and strength, he should be considered the weakest one. So, I use it as the unit of measurement for Reiatsu. Seeing the erudite and talented king, Lan Yan was rarely puzzled, so he explained. This unit of measurement is good, vivid and intuitive. According to your statement, 60-car boxing is my platform period. Aizen couldn't help but smile. As expected of you, you actually took the name of a Shinigami captain as the unit of measurement for Reiatsu. But seeing it, he thought it was easy to use, so he took it. What are you going to do? Lan Yan asked with interest. Because of him, Aizen changed the way of doing things, completely different from the original book. It's not about keeping a low profile and acting secretly. Instead, he blatantly showed his talent, but he also did not forget to put on a gentle personality, which made it easier to act. Since there are boundaries between Shinigami and Shu, what would happen if you poured Shu's power into Shinigami's spirit body? Conversely, what will be the result after Zaishu's spirit body is infused with the power of Shinigami? The experimental results of ordinary Shinigami do not have any reference for us, so here we need Captain Hiriko to tell us the answer. If he can contribute to the experiment that breaks and surpasses the boundaries of Shinigami, he should be very happy to do it. Aizen talked and laughed happily, but the information in the words made people shudder. Of course, before that, we still need to go to a place. As he spoke, he looked towards Lan Yan. Haweko Mundo. Lan Yan spat out 2 words. Yes. The experimental results of ordinary Shinigami have no reference significance for us, and the experimental results obtained by capturing the ordinary Manos Grande that invaded the Soul Society are also of no reference significance. In order to facilitate the experiment, and to leave us a base camp where we can attack, retreat and defend, Haweko Mundo is the best choice. After all, there are not only countless virtual objects for us to experiment with, but also Espada, which is no less than Hiriko. Excellent material for a captain. Aizen nodded with a smile. It's so pitiful, even death is a luxury. Lan Yan shook his head. From the time Hiriko Shinji said to Aizen, when you were in your mother's womb, you were a bad breed, in front of everyone, he knew that Hiriko Shinji's end would be bleak. Not only Hiriko Shinji, but also those captains and vice captains who are friendly with him will also be targeted by Aizen for their wild words. Death, that is a luxury. Not only for Hiriko Shinji, but also for the captains and vice captains around Hiriko Shinji. After all, who doesn't know that Wang Bai seems to be broad-minded, magnanimous, and caring for his subordinates, but in fact he just treats the people around him as pawns and likes to play and dominate at will. Even his subordinates are like this. Let alone Hiriko Shinji. Just when the Lan Yan brothers were talking and laughing and planning the future, they made clear arrangements for the future and ending of Hiriko Shinji, the Shinigami captain and Shinigami vice captain beside him. The other side. After Hiriko Shinji left the Mao Kendo gym, he glanced at the painful wound on his shoulder, frowned, and cursed inwardly. Aizen. Yes. Although it was Lan Yan who hurt him, he couldn't help but want to scold Aizen. Immediately afterwards, he left Spiritual Arts Academy without looking back, but instead of returning to the 5th division, he went to the 4th division. At the shoulder wound, the breath of Reiatsu that has not dissipated for a long time made him feel that something was wrong. Although a little timid, I can only go to the 4th team to find Sister Wa. After all, as one of the veteran captains, others don't know it, but Hiriko Shinji knows it well. Unohana Retsu is not only one of the best masters of Seraiti Kaido, but also one of the best opponents in Kendo. Professional counterparts, even if you feel a little hairy when facing each other, you can only bite the bullet and go there. Sister Wa, I'm here to visit you. Hiriko Shinji strode into the fourth team, but as soon as he entered the door, he was pushed aside by Unohana Retsu. Captain Hiriko, please squat to the side. I'm still busy. I don't have time to greet you at the moment. Unohana Retsu stood by the hospital bed. While performing Kaido treatment on Shingjun lying on the hospital bed, he did not forget to take time out of his busy schedule to deal with Hiriko Shinji. Sister Wa, I am also a captain of the court guard. Come here, don't you have some privileges? Like jumping in line or something? Hiriko Shinji curled his lips, yelling that he was the captain. What did you say? Unohana Retsu turned her head, showing a gentle and peaceful smile, but in Hiriko Shinji's eyes, it was a devil's smile. No. Nothing. I'm just squatting here. You are busy. Hiriko Shinji swallowed hard, then found a corner by himself, and squatted without saying a word. The young, uninformed captain didn't know, how could he not know? The woman in front of her, under her gentle and compassionate appearance, hides a murderous, militant and crazy heart. It's just that in Seraiti, there is Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni suppressing, and above Seraiti, there is also the Zero Division suppressing. In addition, Gote 13, who used to be a killer group, has now become the guardian of order in Seraiti. The once unprecedented villain has now become the angel in white who saves lives and heals the wounded. Hiriko Shinji, who didn't want to see Unohana Retsu draw his sword, was very honest. This waited for more than half an hour, but still did not dare to show any impatience. Your injury, it's caused by the way of the sword. It's strange, this breath was not cut by the captain. Unknowingly, Unohana Retsu has come to Hiriko Shinji. After she glanced at the wound on the opponent's shoulder, she couldn't look away immediately. After scrutinizing her for a while, it was as if the hidden desire in her heart had been ignited, and an irrepressible longing and excitement gradually emerged from the depths of her beautiful eyes. Which captain did it? Unohana Retsu looked up, staring at Hiriko Shinji. Is it important? As a doctor, isn't the first task to save lives and heal the wounded? Hiriko Shinji is also a face-saving person. How dare I tell people in person that I was hacked by a freshman from Spiritual Arts Academy, and I was still nailed to the wall of the Kendo Hall, unable to get off. Unohana Retsu didn't speak, just stared at Hiriko Shinji with a smile. Forehead. Sister Wa, speak up if you have something to say, don't just draw your sword if you disagree. Okay, let me tell you, the person who hacked me was not a captain, but a man named Lan Yan. After Hiriko Shinji caught Unohana Retsu's right hand out of the corner of his eye, and it was already stretching towards the handle of the knife at his waist, he said very sincerely. Having said that, it's just a shame. Don't say it, it's life-threatening. I knew that in Gote 13's Shinigami, there is no such kind of swordsmanship. Aizen, I think I've heard the name before. When Unohana Retsu heard that Hiriko Shinji told him that the person who cut him was not the other captain of Gote 13, his face did not show any surprise. For the captain of Gote 13, and even the strong hidden in the dark, she doesn't know everything about it, but she can also know 9 out of 10. Looking at Seraiti, there is no such thing as a Shinigami who has mastered the way of the sword with such admiration. Not a single one. I remember, it's the chief of this year's Spiritual Arts Academy. Unohana Retsu thought back and remembered Lan Yan's identity. Sister Wa, aren't you surprised at all? A freshman from Spiritual Arts Academy can actually hurt me, the captain of the court guard. Seeing that Unohana Retsu didn't have any surprise on his face, Hiriko Shinji couldn't help but look puzzled. For a person with this kind of swordsmanship, no matter if he is a freshman or whoever he is, it is only natural for him to slash you. He should have shown mercy. Otherwise, if the knife is a little bit sideways, move down a little bit, you really may not have a chance to see me. Unohana Retsu glanced at Hiriko Shinji. Age, seniority in the family, identity. This kind of thing has never been equated with the strength of strength. Sister Wa, you seem to be very interested in this Lan Yan. Hiriko Shinji noticed Unohana Retsu's expression and his heart skipped a beat. It seems that this result is also good. Originally, I only planned to come here to treat the sword wound, but now it seems that there is an unexpected harvest. Being targeted by the biggest villain ever seen in the Soul Society. Come to think of it, even if Lan Yan wanted to continue protecting Aizen, it would be too much for him. Quote. Hana Retsu casts Kaido silently, healing Lan Yan's sword wound on Hirako Shinji's shoulder. But although she didn't speak, there were only a few large characters written in her eyes. Lan Yan, he is my dish. Yes. A peek at Madara tells the whole story. Hana Retsu's heart skipped a beat when she saw the sword wound on Hirako Shinji's shoulder. That torrent of desire and fighting spirit can't be stopped even if you want to. For nothing else. Because, this is a kind of kendo unprecedented in Soul Society. Known as the Yachinryu, she has mastered all schools of swordsmanship in the Soul Society, but now she has developed an extremely powerful and unprecedented swordsmanship. Naturally, she is delighted to see her. Even more excited than meeting Zaraki Kenpachi, who has not yet sealed his strength. After all, she is best at swordsmanship, and what she desires most is swordsmanship. Although the battle with Zaraki Kenpachi was heartwarming, it was not the kendo battle she had envisioned. That night, there seems to be a tacit understanding between the Lan Yan brothers. After returning to the dormitory, the two chose to practice at the same time. The only difference is that Baiwang learned Shunpo in Gondao Zen, Kendo, Kido, and afternoon classes. And Lan Yan was lying on the bed, quietly, watching his own Zanpakudo, Kido, Kendo, and Shunpo in the afternoon when he was studying Shunpo and they were practicing. The former is practicing Shikai, Kendo, Kido and Shunpo by himself. The latter is watching his own Zanpakudo, Kendo, Kido, and Shunpo practicing. Anyway, they are all practicing. Your Kido feels sick until 3 o'clock in the morning, and vows to train Bakudo on the 90th to the state of giving up singing. Your Kendo sneered, indicating that he wants to live to 5 o'clock and practice new Kendo moves. Your Shunpo said that he wants to come from behind and stay up all night today, and at the same time tell you a good news, he has already practiced the third of the 4 maples of stealth footwork, Kong Chan. Watching the Kendo, Kido and Reiatsu, chasing after each other and involving each other, Lan Yan is quite gratified. With such an ability to make progress, why would he not be able to surpass Ling Wang? So what if there is no Quincyr bloodline? What about the power of nothingness? So what if the technique is not finished? Even if he is of pure Shinigami blood, but with his own ability, he is so hardworking, no matter how hard he talks, he can't catch up with him. This feeling is very empty. Someone looking for me. Lan Yan frowned slightly. Originally admiring the crazy introversion of the abilities, he couldn't help sitting up straight from the bed. Lan Yan Sosuke, hello. I am Hana Retsu. Please forgive me for visiting late at night. At the same time, a gentle voice sounded in Lan Yan's ear. The flower of Mao. Lan Yan's face remained unchanged, and as thoughts flickered in his mind, he had roughly guessed the purpose of this first-generation Kenpachi. As expected, Hana Retsu's voice sounded again, and directly indicated his intention. Please let me see your kendo, can you? Although Hana Retsu was asking, his voice was soft like a spring breeze, as if the decision was on Lan Yan's side, but he knew it very well. Just dared to say a word no. This first-generation Kenpachi, whose chest was already full of fierce fighting spirit, was not as polite as the voice transmission invitation to fight, but directly rushed into the Spiritual Arts Academy, first drew his sword and slashed at the gate of his dormitory and then used the knife forced him to fight. First-generation Kenpachi. Interesting. It's because of the wound on Hirako Shinji's shoulder. After Lan Yan murmured, the corners of his lips twitched slightly, as if he had found his favorite toy. He got up, took the knife, and walked out. Coincidentally, he just reached out to open the door of the dormitory, and the door of the dormitory not far away was also pushed open at the same time. Not someone else. It is Aizen. Although Hana Retsu's celestial sky is only transmitted to Lan Yan, it still can't hide it from Aizen, who is next door. I used Bakudo number 58 to catch this Reiatsu. It's not easy. It's completely different from a Shinigami captain like Hirako Shinji. It gives me the feeling that even Shiba's wholeheartedness is not as good as it is. Aizen spoke first. Hana Retsu. Lan Yan opened his mouth and said a name. Captain of Division 4. A Gote captain of the medical rescue team, actually has a Reiatsu who is above Hirako Shinji. Is it because the Soul Society is too ignorant and corrupt, or is it because Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni is old-fashioned? How dare you put such a heroine of the female middle school in the 4th division? Aizen showed some surprise on his face. At this time, he was only on the 4th day of enrollment, not to mention joining Gotei 13, and he hadn't graduated from Spiritual Arts Academy yet, so naturally he wouldn't even investigate Unohana Retsu's real identity. In fact, his understanding of Gotei 13 is based on the few words that Shihuen Yoruichi, Uruhara Kazuki and other Shinigami nobles inadvertently revealed during their daily exchanges, as well as what he collected from the library of Spiritual Arts Academy and other teachers and students. Intelligence. She even came to me for a date. Lan Yan revealed the purpose of Unohana Retsu. The captain of the medical team asked you to fight late at night. The more Aizen listened to it, the more strange it became. The captain of the 4th Division who saved lives and healed the wounded, is he so belligerent? In the middle of the night, an appointment with fencing. Yes, Lan Yan was also quite surprised, but he didn't avoid it, but walked towards the source of Reiatsu with a knife. Interesting. It seems that the water in Gotei 13 is much deeper than I expected. Not all captains like Hiriko Shinji who are suitable for experimental materials. Aizen looked at Lan Yan's back, a smile flashed across his eyes. He just found it quite interesting, and he followed up. Following Reiatsu of Unohana Retsu, the two first left the Spiritual Arts Academy, and then came to a wild forest. On a high and raised hill, a figure stood quietly. The yin-yang moonlight shines down, setting it off mysteriously and powerfully. Don't mind if I bring an audience, Captain Unohana. Lan Yan looked at Unohana Retsu, whose whole body was covered by silver moonlight, and spoke first. If you don't mind, when you can't please me, I cut him off to relieve boredom, of course it's okay. Please leave it here. After all, your blood may not satisfy me. Unohana Retsu's voice is more intoxicating than the spring breeze and softer than running water, but the words that she speaks are creepy. It was completely different from her compassionate and gentle face. It's okay, that kind of thing won't happen. Lan Yan was not surprised at all when he heard this. Is that so? Then please draw your sword. Let me see, your stern swordsmanship, I can hardly hold back my sword. Unohana Retsu's gentle voice suddenly burst with eager excitement. Sure enough, it was attracted by the wound on Hiriko Shinji's shoulder. After Lan Yan heard this, a flash of understanding flashed through his eyes under the frame mirror. Kendo is the only thing that can attract first-generation Kenpachi. Especially the swordplay that Soul Society never had. 100-step flying sword full of vertical and horizontal meanings. As you wish. Lan Yan's voice still remained in place. Before it even reached Unohana Retsu's ears, he had disappeared in place together with Zanpakuto in his hand, and moved in front of Unohana Retsu like a ghost. Clang! In the blink of an eye, Unohana Retsu drew his sword with one hand and held Zanpakuto who was slashing towards his lumbar spine by Lan Yan. When the two knives collided, sparks burst out, illuminating the gloomy forest. Sparkling flowers from Kuchiki's house. I forgot to tell you, this kind of swordsmanship was originally created by me. That's not what I want to see. Unohana Retsu seemed to be very dissatisfied with Lan Yan's use of this kind of kendo to pass him off. With a backhand knife, rolling Reiatsu vented, turning into a terrifying sword pressure, directly forcing Lan Yan back. Before Lan Yan fell from midair, she rushed forward with a lightning-fast speed, Zanpakuto clustered in the hands of the terrifying edge, straight to his heart. The way of the sword, 2 breaks. Lan Yan was in midair, still calm and composed. Quietly, he had changed to holding the knife with both hands, and then condescendingly, he slashed straight down. The overwhelming Reiatsu surged in all directions, seeming to submerge the entire forest, and then quickly gathered on the blade, turning into a huge Reiatsu slash, with the power to split the night, and slashed down from the sky. You still want to send me away with such a low-level thing? Faced with Reiatsu's slashing attack, Unohana Retsu did not dodge or evade, and single-handedly raised the knife, carrying the knife alive. Hiriko Shinji faced up, and could only be pushed back again and again, but she stood motionless on the ground. Not only that, while holding Reiatsu's slash with the horizontal knife in his right hand, his left hand, which had been hidden in his sleeve, suddenly popped out, and a small knife came out of a hole like a lion majesty, biting at Lan Yan's neck at an extremely reversed angle. Is this level of kendo really something the captain of a medical team can possess? Not far away, Aizen was even more surprised when he saw this scene. In just a few seconds, he has seen at least 5 completely unacceptable kendo styles in Unohana Retsu. What is the captain of the 4th division? It's clearly the captain of the 11th division. Not to mention Hirako Shinji, even if Shiba tried to beat Unohana Retsu face to face, he would be hacked to death. Tonight, I came to the right place. For a captain of this level, even if you want to hold back, you probably won't be able to do so. Right, brother. Thinking of this, Aizen's eyes revealed deep anticipation. After enrolling in Spiritual Arts Academy, he can intuitively feel that with each passing day, the gap between himself and Lan Yan widens by 1 point. Now 4 days have passed, but his understanding of Lan Yan has become blurred. Failure to see the gap clearly means that it is difficult to catch up. Originally, Aizen was still thinking about finding an excuse to play a game with Lan Yan in a few days to see how far the other party has gone. Just in time, the appearance of Unohana Retsu directly helped him a lot. It's also Captain Guard. It's also the way of the sword. Hirako Shinji, you're not even worthy to lift Unohana Retsu's shoes. Facing the short sword attacking at such a speed as Lion Majesty spit out a letter, Lan Yan sighed in his heart. Against Hirako Shinji, he was crushing from start to finish. With just 3 cuts, it was completely suppressed. Can compete with Unohana Retsu in kendo, but you come and go, between brothers. The warm-up exercise is over. How long do you want to hide your clumsiness? Lan Yan, use your sword to please me. Unohana Retsu's beautiful eyes were full of desire and urgency that could not be concealed. Want to see the 100-step flying sword? As you wish. Hearing this, Lan Yan raised Zanpakuto with his backhand and swung it violently. Hold head high. As soon as Zanpakuto left his hand, there was a thunderous thunder, and the sound of the sword like a dragon's chant spread instantly, quickly sweeping across the entire forest. Thousands of birds and hundreds of beasts were frightened by the terrifying sound of the saber and scattered in all directions, fleeing crazily. Clang! Under Unohana Retsu's ecstatic gaze, Zanpakuto, which flew out of Lan Yan's palm, has turned into a golden dragon roaring at the sky and looking down on the earth. With just a slight flick of the dragon's tail, her dark sword flew out, cutting off more than a dozen towering ancient trees that towered into the sky one after another. At the same time, Lan Yan stood in the air, pressing down with his right hand. The deafening knife sound resounded continuously. The terrifying Reiatsu golden dragon first roamed freely under the night, illuminating the pitch-black night sky, and then swooped down in a circle, engulfed in a majestic coercion, pouring down. This is the way of the sword that I want to face directly. That's the fight I'm after. Soul Society's unprecedented swordsmanship, let me cut you off with my own hands. Feeling the sword pressing down on Longwei, Unohana Retsu smiled instead of being surprised. How long? She almost forgot how long she hadn't been as happy as she is now. Perhaps, from the moment she gave up the name of Kenpachi and went to the 4th team as the captain, she has never been as excited, ecstatic, and excited as she is now. Seeing that Lan Yan finally used the 100-step flying sword that he longed for, Unohana Retsu no longer held back. As a first-generation Kenpachi, she has her own pride. Since Lan Yan doesn't use Zanpakuto's ability, neither can she. Boom! Facing the giant Reiatsu dragon falling from the sky, she burst out with blood-red light, which was as thick as a blood mist, and Reiatsu, which was filled with a chilling bloody smell, enveloped her whole body and soared into the sky. The moment she met the Reiatsu dragon, she waved the knife with one hand, bursting out a blood-red knife light, carrying the majestic momentum of the first-generation Kenpachi, and went straight to the sky, colliding with the Reiatsu dragon in all directions, and broke out unprecedentedly. Intense conflict. There is no colorful Kido. Zanpakuto liberated without the ability to occult. There is only a sword collision that is as pure as ultimate and as powerful as ultimate. Bang bang bang. It was this unpretentious conflict of swordsmanship, but it burst out with a monstrous edge, sweeping in all directions, uprooting ancient trees, and then chopping them into pieces, splitting the ground into countless cracks, rolling up sand and dust like magma gushes huge waves. Under the competition of the Reiatsu dragon and the bloody sword light, the night like a black cloth was directly divided into 2. One side is gold, one side is bloody. It presents a clear and terrifying picture. Click. The violent conflict, I don't know how long it will last. Until there was a burst of tearing silk, suddenly sounded. The bloody light soaring into the sky was shattered. The domineering dragon dissipated. Even the huge dust column that shot up into the sky was blown apart. Immediately afterwards, the sound of dripping blood falling to the ground could be heard clearly in the forest that gradually returned to calm. No, the battlefield that has now become a plain. The feeling of the blade piercing into the flesh is really nostalgic. I've been away for hundreds of years, and I've almost forgotten what it feels like. Sure enough, only blood, only the strong, can please me and make my blood boil. Hana Retsu's delicate body trembled slightly, but immediately stood firm, and then lowered her head to sweep over her stalwart pie. A bloody incision went straight from the skin into the lungs, and then pierced out from the back. A normal person, even the strong-willed and extremely powerful captain of the court guard, would inevitably suffer serious injuries and excruciating pain. She was the only one who had withstood the 100-step flying sword and was pierced through her body. Her slightly pale face revealed an incomparably bewitching intoxication. The injury couldn't move her. Pain cannot disturb his heart. At this moment, her mind, her senses, and her spirit were all immersed in Lan Yan's 100-step flying sword, enjoying the joy this sword brought her. Is this your way of the sword? Hana Retsu was intoxicated for a moment, reaching out and caressing the penetrating wound on her right chest. How? Lan Yan stretched out his hand and turned into a Reiatsu dragon just now, flying back Zanpakuto that was pierced by first-generation Kenpachi Hana Retsu, and fell into his palm again. Vertical and horizontal, looking at everything. Hana Retsu gave the answer almost without thinking. Do you want to continue? Lan Yan accepted Hana Retsu's evaluation frankly, and then glanced at the other's wound. I am the captain of the 4th team, you know it very well. But you don't know why I want to learn Kaido. It is to enjoy the fun of fighting more fully and thoroughly. Hana Retsu said while casting Kaido on the wound. The shocking incision was gradually covered by green light, and the wound was healing at an astonishing speed. Injury, pain, fatigue, these things will more or less prevent me from enjoying myself. Of course, I'm even more afraid that my favorite opponent will be accidentally killed by me, but I can't save him immediately. When the voice fell, the wound on her chest had already healed 7 or 88. Certainly, this is only on the surface. Unless it is Inoue Orihime's Vientiane rejection that violates the realm of the gods. Otherwise, no matter how powerful Kaido was, it would be impossible to heal the injury caused by Lan Yan's 100-step flying sword in a short time. Hana Retsu is also well aware of this. However, all she wanted was to prevent negative buffs such as pain, fatigue, and excessive blood loss from affecting her battle. Eliminate these, Kaido can still do it. Yeah. It's a pity. From now on, you only have one concern, whether Kaido can cure the defeat. Lan Yan smiled lightly. I'll wait and see. By the way, before that, I want to apologize for my previous faux pas. My name is not Hana Retsu. Based on the sword just now, you are qualified to know my real name, so please allow me to introduce myself here again. Hana Yakiryu showed an apologetic smile. It's our first time meeting. I'm Hana Yakiryu, taken from mastering all kendo schools of Soul Society. Or this name, it sounds more familiar to you. First generation Kenpachi of Gote 13. As soon as this word came out, Aizen, who was on the sidelines, was both surprised and clear. All the mysteries were solved when Hana Yakiryu revealed his former name. Why does the captain of a medical team possess such superb swordsmanship? Why does the captain of a medical team have such a crazy fighting spirit? Just because the opponent is first-generation Kenpachi, who is also the first-generation captain of the 11th team. Master all the kendos of the Soul Society. That's not the case at all. Captain Hana. Lan Yan shook his head and laughed. His kendo is an existence that Hana Retsu can't grasp. That's why I'm here tonight. A kendo wizard who can establish a sect, you should have a stronger kendo. Let me experience it, use all you have to please me. Ujiwa Yachinliu stared straight at Lan Yan, her beautiful eyes were full of burning desire like a raging fire. If she was an angel who saved lives and healed the wounded on weekdays, she is now a bloodthirsty and warlike devil. Lan Yan Sosuke. The voice fell. Hana Yakiryu didn't intend to give Lan Yan a chance to refuse at all, and immediately stepped on Shunpo, blending with Zanpakuto in his hand like a teleportation. dragging a very oppressive sword in the void and going straight Lan Yan neck. To please you, I'm really underestimated. It seems that it's time for you to understand my power. Lan Yan didn't even look at Zanpakuto, who was quickly approaching his neck, and made a behavior that surprised and puzzled Unohana Yakiryu, and even Aizen on the side. Hearing a clang, he had inserted the Zanpakuto in his palm back into the scabbard. What are you doing? A Shinigami without a sword is like a tiger without claws. Or, are you already at the end of your skills? A trace of suspicion flashed across Unohana Yakiryu's beautiful eyes, but Zanpakuto in his hand did not hesitate at all, dragging the terrifying sword pressure, and slashed straight down. Can't please her. Then it will be cut. Can't satisfy her. Then use blood to make up for it. This is the murderous intention of Unohana Yakiryu after revealing her true identity. Even seeing Lan Yan put away Zanpakuto suddenly, she didn't have the slightest bit of kindness in the usual way, and she didn't intend to keep her hand at all. Instead, she felt dissatisfied. No Shinigami has ever dared to abandon the sword when fighting with her. Even if it is the strongest Shinigami in the millennium, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni would not dare. A sword is such an inconvenience. As if seeing the dissatisfaction in Unohana Yakiryu's heart, Lan Yan slowly raised his head and glanced at her. Clang. Immediately afterwards, the hands were opened outwards, the index finger and middle finger were brought together, and the monstrous Reiatsu torrent raged. Just when the Zanpakuto of Unohana Yakiryu was less than 1 centimeter away from her neck, the ground under her feet burst into cracks, and then one after another. The shapes were simple but different, but without exception they were all the same. The long sword, exuding a frightening sword pressure, rose from the ground, slowly lifted into the sky, and surrounded it like stars holding the moon. Boom! The Zanpakuto that pierced through the air, together with the majestic sword pressure clustered around the body of the sword, were all isolated, and it was impossible to go beyond the 8 Reiatsu long swords surrounding Lan Yan and hurt him in the slightest. You really have a stronger sword. What's this? How can it be so powerful without holding Zanpakuto? Seeing this scene, Unohana Yakiryu saw that the Zanpakuto he swung with all his strength could not split through the Reiatsu defensive arm formed by the 8 swords in front of him. At first, his face paled with shock, and then his eyes bloomed like never before. The madman and intoxication of the past. This is the way of the sword. What she pursued was to fight the Shinigami who mastered this ultimate kendo. Only in this way can he prove that he is still the woman with the strongest swordsmanship in the Soul Society. The way of the sword, 8 swords flying together. Lan Yan pushed straight across the air with his left hand. Originally in a defensive posture, the 8 Reiatsu long swords floating around his body suddenly turned into an offensive posture. As the blade of the sword flew up, the blade pointed directly at Yakiryu Unoka, and a powerful storm of sword pressure was unleashed immediately, cutting the already messy forest to pieces and sending dust into the sky. Unohana Retsu only felt a majestic sword pressure coming from Zanpakuto in her palm, forcing her body to retreat uncontrollably. Before she could stabilize her body, the 8 Reiatsu long swords had already pierced through the air, like meteors piercing the sky, cutting the night like a black cloth with 8 gorgeous sword marks. Clang! See here, Unohana Retsu didn't dare to neglect. The fighting consciousness and instinct developed through years of life and death fighting allowed her to take the most correct action immediately without thinking about her brain. Suddenly, she stabbed Zanpakuto to the ground with her backhand, forcibly fixed her body, then paced with her right foot. Her lumbar spine was like a big bow, and her arms and Zanpakuto shot out like sharp arrows. The way of the sword, 8,000 styles. Faced with the mighty Reiatsu longsword, which is like a shooting star piercing the sky. Unohana Retsu does not retreat but advances, displaying his own kendo that has been exhausted for thousands of years and integrates all genres of Soul Society. It is not only her own name, but also the way of swords that she is most proud of. 8,000 streams. Boom. Knives flash. Reiatsu clashes. Under the loud noise that shook the sky, the strength of the two collided fiercely, bursting out a spiritual storm that destroyed everything. Wherever it passed, the towering ancient trees, the rising hills, the huge boulders entrenched on the ground, etc., were chopped into pieces and emptied in an instant, leaving only a huge deep pit like a meteorite hitting the ground. Inside the pit, a column of spiritual light mixed with spiral sinking waves soared into the sky, submerging into the boundless night of Soul Society in an instant, blooming with incomparable brilliance. It seemed that even the night was about to recede early. Under the conflict of power between the two, the dawn was ushered in early. Your kendo is very good. But my way of the sword is stronger. With your mere kendo, it's delusional to want to win the 8,000 ryu, which I have gathered the essence of all schools in the world. Unohana Yakuryu held the sword in both hands, and after suppressing the Reiatsu long sword like flying fire meteor, the brows showed the heroic demeanor of the sword that looked down on the world. What a disappointment. As first-generation Kenpachi, you can only see such a short view. Lan Yan shook his head when he heard the words, and then, without waiting for Uno Jawa Yachinliu to refute, he raised his hand as a sword finger, and made a point in the air. The 8 Reiatsu long swords that had been gradually suppressed immediately burst into incomparable brilliance, and then under the gaze of Unohana Retsu's suddenly constricted pupils, the 8 different Reiatsu long swords merged into one surrounded by endless sword lights. 8 swords in one. Clang. Accompanied by a resounding sound that resounded through the heavens and the earth, a chilling clanging sword rang out, and a meteor-like, storm-like Reiatsu lightsaber shot out across the sky, surrounded by unrivaled sharpness, and brought Yachi Unohana to Zanpakuto submerged together in the sword-light tide. How can it be? Unohana's beautiful eyes were slightly absent-minded, and she was caught in the torrent made by Reiatsu's sword light. She only felt that all the scenes and things in front of her had disappeared, and there was only one weapon left that could penetrate the earth and cut through the universe. Reiatsu lightsaber. Puff. The torrent of sword light pushes across. In the deep crater of the meteorite, a huge gully with a length of hundreds of meters immediately appeared, destroying all the substances inside one by one. Click. Suddenly, there was a crackling sound. In all directions, a Keto enchantment suddenly appeared. It's just that from the moment the Keto barrier was exposed to sight, countless fine cracks extended like a broken mirror, and then pieces of the barrier peeled off and finally shattered. Obviously, in this forest, an enchantment has already been set up early to avoid the spread of the powerful Reiatsu caused by the battle just now, causing unnecessary impact. At the same time, the end of the ravine. A shabby beauty in ragged clothes, using a knife as a crutch, but still half kneeling in the chasm. At this time, the twisted braid on Unohana Yakuryu's chest has been scattered, turning into a waterfall of shawls, and the white long-sleeved haori embroidered with the 4th division on his body, which symbolizes the identity of the captain, has been broken and turned into strands of cloth, falling down around the feet. There was only a scarred death bully costume left on his body, barely covering part of the Shinigami pie. The most eye-catching thing was her waist and abdomen. At this time, the blood donation had infiltrated and dyed the deadly domineering outfit red. However, for your own injuries, for their defeat, for the broken long-sleeved haori and the dilapidated Shiba outfit, Uno no Hana Yakiliu doesn't care. Her mind and attention were all focused on Lan Yan's sword just now. The eyes are sometimes in a trance, sometimes obsessed, and sometimes intoxicated. It seems that I am immersed in it and cannot extricate myself. She is first-generation Kenpachi, and Yakuryu who claims to master all schools of kendo in the world. For Unohana Yakuryu, there are only 2 things that are irresistible. One is fighting, the second is kendo. The sword just now was both a fight and a way of swordsmanship. That's why she was obsessed with it, as if it was broken. Unprecedented and ultimate kendo fighting. This is the most intoxicating and difficult battle for her. That sword just now, 8 swords in one. Before Unohana Yakuryu could finish speaking, Lan Yan had already given the answer she most wanted to know. 8 swords in one. Amazing. With your own strength, you can actually surpass the 8,000 streams that I have exhausted thousands of years of time and wisdom to gather the essence of all schools in the world. Unohana Yachinliu murmured, chewing on the sound of the words, 8 swords in one. After a while, she raised her head, exerted force on her feet, and stood up from a half-kneeling position. I must admit it is. As far as kendo is concerned, among the Shinigami I've seen, there is no one better than you. Including me, including your excellency the captain. Unoka Yakiliu let out a long sigh of relief, and the corners of her lips curled up slightly, revealing an intoxicated smile. She was obviously overwhelmed by the combination of 8 swords, piercing through her body, but she was so happy and intoxicated. Just because for her, nothing can make her enjoy and fascinate her more than getting a top-notch sword fight. Lan Yan Sosuke. I, Unohana Yakuryu, first-generation Kenpachi, would like to call you the strongest. Hana Yaqianliu looked at Lan Yan with a sweet smile, and gave the highest praise in his mouth. Yes, it is the strongest. In her life, it's not that she hasn't met someone who is more powerful than her, and it's not that she hasn't tasted defeat. For example, thousands of years ago, after being defeated by Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, only then did the first generation Kenpachi and the captain of the 11th team of Gote come into being. For example, Zaraki Kenpachi before self-sealing, it was that defeat, he gave up the name of Kenpachi, changed his name to Unohana Retsu, and became the captain of the 4th team. But no matter which battle, Unohana Retsu did not lose in Kendo. Facing Yamamoto Genyanagi Shigekuni, she was defeated by Zanpakuto. In front of Zanpakuto, the oldest and most powerful Zanpakuto in the hot department, no one has ever been able to win head-on. Facing Zaraki Kenpachi who has no sealed power, she lost to Reiatsu. The most proud, and even named Yachi Ryu's Kendo for this reason, has never been defeated. But today, when facing Lan Yan, he lost, and lost completely. Your Kendo favors him tonight, and you use him to win the title of the strongest swordsmanship in the Soul Society. I am very happy, because I reached the top, I had a burst of inspiration, and I suddenly realized the way of the sword. 10,000 swords returned to the sect. Is it the strongest? Hearing this, Lan Yan just smiled lightly, not happy because Unohana Yakiryu honored him as the strongest. At this time, his thoughts are all on the Wanjian Guizong that he has just realized in his Kendo. The name of the strongest in the area is not as good as the epiphany of swordsmanship, which makes him more excited and concerned, not even a tenth of it. Aizen on the side also smiled after hearing this. Obviously, he understood what his brother was thinking. In addition, Shinigami may be complacent about the so-called Kenpachi name and the so-called strongest swordsmanship. But he knew that Lan Yan would not. It is only a matter of course that the sword is the strongest, so how can you be happy? Kendo, Kido, White Hits, Shunpo, Reiatsu, and Zanpakuto, each of which is at its strongest, is something to be happy about. Aizen knows that this is Lan Yan's pursuit, and it is also his pursuit. How? You don't seem very happy. Seeing this, Maojiawa Yachinliu was a little puzzled. Would you be happy for something that is a matter of course, or even a fact in itself? Lan Yan did not answer the question. I see. It seems that your ambition is not in the way of the sword. No, it should be said that it is not limited to the way of the sword. After hearing this, Unohana Bachinliu was shocked. She knew that Zanquan Zogwei, Reiatsu and Zanpakuto were one-sidedly powerful, and one-sided strongest was not what Lan Yan wanted. The man in front of him was looking for the strongest hexagon. As the two looked at each other, they fell silent. Lan Yan's thoughts were all on Wanjian Guizong who had just hit him in the face by Ken Dao. The 8,000 flowers of Mao's flowers are self-shocked by Lan Yan's ambition. The sword just now is not your ultimate, right? I can sense that there is a more magnificent sword scene behind it. Unfortunately, today can only end here. I really want to take a look, that scenery. After a brief silence, Unohana Yakiryu took the lead to break the silence, and before Lan Yan could answer, she looked up at the broken Kido barrier and the dawn gradually approaching, then sighed softly, full of regret and unwillingness. For her, such a sword fight is simply a fatal temptation. 100 times scarier than poppies. People will die. Lan Yan said meaningfully. For a Shinigami who bears the name Kenpachi, death is the only destination. There is nothing more compelling than dying while witnessing the scenery at the top of the Tao of Sword. But now is not the time. In the 8,000 voices of Unohana, it is full of contempt for death, with the proud aura of the pinnacle of swordsmanship. This is first-generation Kenpachi. The greatest villain ever seen in the Soul Society. Even if there is Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni suppressing her, she can only let her sword be covered with a layer of order, but when needed, she can tear it off at any time, and turn back to her thousands of years ago and then devote herself to the world. In the battle of selflessness. Until beheading the opponent, or be beheaded by the opponent. If you have this idea, I can always do what you want. After all, she is Soul Society's first-generation Kenpachi, and the strongest female Shinigami. You, who represent the highest swordsmanship of the Soul Society in the past, are worthy of me personally using the sword to help you make a settlement. Yunozawa Yachinliu's words, expressions, and eyes are full of undisguised longing and intoxication, which Lan Yan can naturally see. For this reason, he opened his mouth and gave the other party a promise. Give first-generation Kenpachi a ride as you wish. I am looking forward. Yunozawa Bachinliu heard the words. Instead of being angry, she was happy, and there was a strong expectation in her beautiful eyes. Those who don't know, think that she is a woman who is in love, and she will never think that she can't wait for a battle that will give up everything. Aizen Sosuke, there is one more thing. You beat me tonight with a knife. In the name of Kenpachi, I should have surrendered. Unfortunately, hundreds of years ago, there was a person more qualified to have the name Kenpachi than me. Although I didn't use Bankai at that time, it is undeniable that I lost in the end. The name of Kenpachi and the captain of the 11th team are no longer in my hands, so I can't give these things to you as the spoils of war for defeating me tonight. Yunohana Yakiryu remembered something, and his expression was a little guilty. At the same time, he also felt guilty for losing the name of Kenpachi and the captain of the 11th team. Chapter 41. Defeat a Shinigami who bears the name Kenpachi and is also a first-generation Kenpachi. According to the rules of Seraiti, as the winner, Lan Yan should inherit everything from the opponent. However, whether it is the captain of the 11th team or the name Kenpachi, Yunohana Yakiryu does not have it at this time. This also leaves tonight's winner, Lan Yan, with nothing. It doesn't matter, maybe to you, whether it's Kenpachi or the captain of the 11th team, it's all a noble thing. But as far as I'm concerned, it's not even the icing on the cake, so don't worry about it at all. If I really want it, I will come and get it myself. Lan Yan chuckled lightly, with awe-inspiring confidence in his tone. Obviously, for him, whether it's Kenpachi or the 11th team, it's just a casual thing. Don't take it, it's not that you can't get it, it's just that you don't want it. If it is you, you are indeed qualified to say such a thing. Yunozawa 8000 rumors, not only did not feel that Lan Yan was conceited, but took it for granted. I will be there on the day you graduate early and go to the 5th team to challenge Hiriko Shinji. She glanced at Lan Yan, pondered for a while, and then said. Can I understand that this is a prize for defeating the first generation on the sword? Lan Yan asked with great interest after hearing this. Although Shiba Yixin said that there are 3 ways to become Gotei 13, especially the third one is to challenge the captain of the guard and replace him. First of all, 200 Shinigami students are witnesses, which is not something ordinary people can do. Secondly, the captain of the court guard not only represents strength, but also power. With Hiriko Shinji's flexible bottom line and personality, if he goes to the 5th team alone, then, no matter whether he wins or loses, he will be suppressed with a trumped-up charge, and there is no other way but to defect. Sure, goodbye, then. The only man in Seoul society who can thoroughly please me, Lan Yan Sosuke. Seeing that the sky was getting brighter, Yunohana Yakiryu no longer stayed any longer. Although she didn't mind being in shabby clothes in front of Lan Yan and looking like a scumbag, she didn't want others to see her either. After all, even if he is not the captain of the 11th team, he is still the captain of the 4th team. This bit of face is still necessary. She stared deeply at Lan Yan one last time, as if she wanted to engrave the face of the only Shinigami who could please her into the deepest part of her memory, before turning around and disappearing from Lan Yan's sight. Aizen, what do you think? After watching Yunohana Yachinliu go away, Lan Yan withdrew his gaze, turned his head and asked Aizen who had come behind him. The water in Seraiti is a little deeper than I expected. Aizen freely admits that he underestimated Seraiti. He wasn't ashamed that he had misjudged Seraiti's abilities. After all, he is still a student of the Spiritual Arts Academy, and he is neither of noble origin nor possesses the omniscience and omnipotence of Juhabak. The estimation of Seraiti's strength naturally needs to be constantly adjusted anytime and anywhere. Like tonight, after learning about Yunohana Yakiryu's past and strength, the estimation of Seraiti has changed. Of course, Gotei 13 also has capable people. But Seraiti is, after all, just as you said, corrupt, ignorant, stubborn, and backward. Gotei 13 can't tolerate her, and Seraiti can't tolerate her either. Unless Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni is still alive, no one dares to let this first-generation Kenpachi continue to exist. Lan Yan is not worried that Unohana Yakiryu will become his hindrance. As long as Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni is killed, the structure of Gote 13 established by relying on his prestige and force will become loose and vulnerable. At that time, Unohana Yakiryu may not necessarily be on the opposite side of him. After all, he's a Shinigami, not a Quincy. Yamamoto Genryuzai Shigekuni can suppress Unohana Yakiryu, and he can also subdue this murderous and warlike first-generation Kenpachi. Aizen didn't speak, but quietly stared in the direction Unohana Yakiryu left. You want to get rid of her? Lan Yan looked at Aizen. Looking at the look in the eyes of the king, he knew that the other party had murderous intentions for Unohana Yakian. No, I was wondering if there is a better way than killing Captain Unohana. After all, on the day when it stands on the top of the zenith, there can't be no one under the throne. You're right, brother. Aizen Sosuke shook his head and said with a chuckle. Kill a first-generation Kenpachi. Looking at the Soul Society, this kind of thing can cause an uproar, but when he said it, it became a matter of course. It was as if what he wanted to kill was not the greatest villain ever seen in the Soul Society, but a very ordinary Shinigami member. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. Lan Yan revealed a name. I see. It's a really good approach. A gleam flashed across Aizen's eyes, and he nodded knowingly. Spiritual Arts Academy behind the mountain. Shihoin Yoruichi walked unhurriedly through the forest, from tree to tree. It seems to be walking in the garden, but in fact, after each step, the figure will disappear from the original place, and then appear 10 meters away. Walking around, there is already a bit of the style of Flash Goddess in the future. Shish. Dozens of steps in a row, dozens of times of moving across the air, the eyes are covered by tree roots and vegetation, and the narrow sight immediately becomes empty. Immediately, what came into view was the edge of the cliff, and a figure sitting cross-legged, with Zanpakuto placed on his lap, seemed to be having a conversation with Zanpakuto through sword meditation. Got you. Shihoin Yoruichi's eyes fell on the back of the other party, a cunning flashed in his beautiful eyes, and then he stepped on the almost silent catwalk and kept approaching him. The other side, sitting cross-legged on the edge of the cliff, Lan Yan is admiring the beautiful scenery of Seraiti below, while looking at his new ability. White hits, sweating profusely under the brilliant sun. Your white hits, after concentrating on training, combined with the physical knowledge in textbooks, successfully created a set of physical skills that integrate offense, defense, dodge, and footwork, which he called Shinigami 6 Styles. Seeing that White Hits has entered the country rapidly and has already started to create his own physical skills, a smile flashed across Lan Yan's eyes. Suddenly, he sensed Reiatsu's movement from behind, and the corners of his mouth raised slightly. The fourth of Bakudo this rope. Just as Shihoin Yoruichi was getting closer to Lan Yan, less than 5 meters away, a voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Flying along with him was a spiritual light cord, like a boa constrictor, entangled his hands and feet. However, before the spiritual light cord had time to tighten, Shihoin Yoruichi, whose hands and feet were entangled, began to fade rapidly, until it turned into a coat, stayed in place, and was bound by the spiritual light chain. Compared to Kendo, I am inferior to you. Compared to Reiatsu, I am also inferior to you. Compared to Kendo, I am still inferior to you. But Shunpo, I have great confidence in myself. This is the third of the 4 maples, Kong-chan, let's see it, Lan Yan. Shihoin Yoruichi stepped forward with such a fast speed that his figure flashed like lightning, and he grabbed Lan Yan's shoulder with one hand. 61 of Bakudo 6 sticks of light prison 10 heavy. Lan Yan still turned her back to Shihoin Yoruichi, until her palm was less than 10 centimeters from her shoulder. The space behind her suddenly burst into brilliant golden light. Immediately afterwards, 6 paths golden light sheets appeared out of thin air, and then each light sheet was divided into 10, and then weaved into a net that surrounded Shihoin Yoruichi impenetrably. You, Aizen, when did you master the Kido technique of quasi-singing? Facing the huge net of light covering all directions without leaving even a single gap for himself, Shihoin Yoruichi was like a ferocious beast locked in a cage, and he withered on the spot. There is no way, facing the overwhelming light in front of her, even if she even gave up her underwear, it is impossible to escape from the gap between the light. Isn't it written in the Kido encyclopedia? Kido techniques like simulacrum are just child's play. I just need to watch it once to get the hang of it. Lan Yan looked down at the Spiritual Arts Academy below, and said in a neutral tone. That's right, the technique of quasi-singing, which is used to make up for Shinigami's abandonment of chanting through numbers, which greatly reduces the power of Kido, is indeed not difficult to master. But this is the 6-stick light prison, the Bakudo of number 61. You cast 10 times in one breath. Let's not talk about how many Reiatsu you need, just say that you must ensure that the power of the 10-fold 6-stick light prison will not decrease in the slightest, and you can control it as you like. Shihoin Yoruichi's eyes widened, and when he looked at Lan Yan, it was like looking at a monster. It's like a duet. She does, of course, but it's usually used for low-level Hado, and mid-level Bakudo, with the renunciation chant. Without him, for high-level Kido, even a captain-level Shinigami may not be able to ensure that Kido's power is not inferior to full chanting, even if the chanting is abandoned. Even giving up the chant and casting a high-level Hado still can't achieve the same power, not to mention giving up the chant on the basis of casting a pseudo-duet. The combination of quasi-singing and abandoning singing is used on high-level Kido. Even most of the guard captains often have only 2 results. Either when Reiatsu takes time out, Kido fails, or when Reiatsu goes berserk, Hado loses control and blows himself up before hurting the enemy. But what about Lan Yan? Directly Bakudo's 61, 6 sticks of light and 10 companies, not only the power of each Bakudo is not inferior to the full chant, but also can be perfectly controlled, like arms and fingers. Reiatsu that is as vast as the sea. That unfathomable Kido attainment. It actually appeared on a Shinigami who had been in contact with Kido for less than 10 days. How to teach her Shihoin Yoruichi is not surprised. Did I just use the quasi-do? Lan Yan turned his head and looked at Shihoin Yoruichi who was surrounded by 60 sticks of light. It's not a quasi-singing, what else could it be? Shihoin Yoruichi glanced at the sheet of light in front of him. Abandon the re-sing. Lan Yan doesn't hide anything, after all, it's just a name. What? Abandon the re-sing? Does the Soul Society have such a technique? I do not know how. Shihoin Yoruichi frowned slightly, and seriously recalled all the records of Kido's cultivation that he had come into contact with, but found that he had never heard of this name. I created it. Of course you don't know. Lan Yan chuckled lightly. You created it. When did this happen? Shihoin Yoruichi was shocked immediately. First, he created his own kendo, nailing the captain-level Shinigami and Hiriko Shinji to the wall with one move. If it's creating a Kido, that's okay, many Shinigami can do it. But in terms of Kido skills, any kind of Kido was created by the Shinigami of the past dynasties, exhausting thousands of years, or even thousands of years of time and wisdom. But what about Lan Yan? From the moment I came into contact with Kido to now, it doesn't even add up to 10 days, right? The day before yesterday. As soon as Lan Yan said this, Shihoin Yoruichi's mouth opened into an O, unable to speak for a long time. Lan Yan, are you really a Shinigami? A living body with the same structure as me? Otherwise, everyone is a Shinigami, and also a 6-year Shinigami education at Spiritual Arts Academy. Why are you so good? Shihoin Yoruichi glared at Lan Yan with monster-like eyes. Leave that aside, you're not studying at Spiritual Arts Academy, why come here to hang out instead? Lan Yan didn't talk much about his Kido accomplishments. No way. You can't tell Shihoin Yoruichi that ever since Unohana Yakuryu took the initiative to come to the door that night and invited him to a fencing under the moon, and won the title of the strongest from first-generation Kenpachi, the way of swordsmanship depends on everyone folks, it looks like everyone is selling the first bid. Especially in the face of Kido, Kendo, Shunpo and white hits, it is completely judging people with their nostrils. If it wasn't for Zanpakudo Candle Yin who had already comprehended Bankai, Kendo would even want to ride on the opponent's head. Seeing that the way of swordsmanship is becoming more and more domineering and defiant day by day, while feeling uncomfortable, Kido also secretly decides to practice hard, strive to become stronger, and strive to win the title of the strongest from the Master Kido. So, in just a few days, not only did he make great strides in the cultivation of Hado and Bakudo, but even the number 80 Hado was able to give up chanting, and his power remained undiminished. The chants are similar to the re-singing of the 4 Kido skills learned, and then embrace all rivers and bring forth the new By combining the three Kido techniques of abandonment chant, double chant, and quasi-chant, taking the essence and discarding the dross, Soul Society finally created an abandonment chorus that combines the essence of the three techniques in one. Abandoning the chanting, you can abandon the process of chanting Jo Wien, and directly pronounce the Kido's name to use the Kido. Double chant, through specific rules, after combining the chant of two Kido, the two Kido can be released simultaneously. It is similar to re-singing. When abandoning chant and performing Kido, by consuming several times of Reiatsu, the effect of abandoning chant is displayed several times, that is, the number of Kido makes up for the quality of Kido. However, because of the extremely high difficulty and the huge consumption of Reiatsu, only available for low intermediate Kido. But Lan Yan found that his own Kido had practiced for several days, and created the abandonment chorus, but he could simultaneously release 2, 3, or even 10 Kido on the basis of abandonment chants, and the consumption of Reiatsu was far less than that of the ensemble, much smaller, even the premium Kido can fit. In a word, abandoning chant, double chant, imitation duet can't do things, abandoning duet can do, abandoning chant, double chant, imitation duet can do, abandoning duet can do better. Kido licensed, this is abandoning duets. Aren't you going to practice Bankai and prepare for Hiriko Shinji? I see that you have been on leave for several days in a row, and you haven't even attended the White Hits class, so I came here to have a look, and by the way, I will give you a small stove to help you make up for the White Hits class. The result, you didn't know what to do. You just came up with a set of 6 sticks. No, it was 60 sticks that hit me in the face. Lan Yan, is this how you treat the remedial teacher? Shihoin Yoruichi glanced at the 60 rays of light in front of him, and crossed his arms, making the Shinigami pancake look slightly inferior to the grandeur of Unohana Yakiryu. No, I don't go to White Hits class, of course I have my reasons. Won't fall behind in the White Hits field by missing a class. Teacher Yixin also knows about it, so he allowed me to ask for leave. Lan Yan heard that Shihoin Yoruichi came here to make up for himself, to make up for the White Hits class he missed, first glanced at the chocolate girl in front of him, then shook his head and declined politely. Give him White Hits lessons. If it is the future chocolate royal not, then he is somewhat qualified to say this. But now, even if he would, his super talented White Hits wouldn't. What if I nodded and White Hits refused to go on strike? Instead of practicing with Shihoin Yoruichi, it is better to let White Hits work hard on his own, and strive to catch up with the abilities of Zanpakuto, Kido, Kendo, Reiatsu, and Shunpo as soon as possible. How, you think I'm not qualified to teach you? I dare not say anything else, but White Hits and Shunpo, looking at Spiritual Arts Academy, there is no one better than me. Shihoin Yoruichi saw that he came to the door with good intentions, but Lan Yan refused directly, and felt that he was underestimated. Including you. If you don't believe me, let's practice. No Zanpakuto, no Kendo, no Kido, just Shunpo and White Hits, see if I am qualified to be your tutor. The corners of her mouth raised slightly, provoking a provocative arc. Your White Hits is very dissatisfied with Shihoin Yoruichi's provocation. He asked you to fight, expressing that you are willing to use the 6 Shinigami styles to justify his name. Starting tonight, he will stay up late every day until he has practiced the new Shinigami posture. Lan Yan originally didn't want to be serious with Shihoin Yoruichi, but he couldn't hold back White Hits' earnest request, and he gave too much. Staying up late every day, I came up with a new Shinigami body technique. To him, it's still very attractive. Okay, since you're asking so strongly, I'll practice with you. In case you lose and say that I bullied you, crying nose, I will let you do 3 tricks. Lan Yan's words ignited the vigor and fierceness hidden in the little female cat's bones. You're the one crying. Besides, who asked you to let it go? When Shihoin Yoruichi heard this, he immediately became furious. She couldn't even see the soles of her feet on the ground, and the person had already jumped out of the spot, like a black lightning, flashing in front of Aaron at an astonishing speed. It looked like a slender hand, but the moment she clenched her fingers and struck directly, but it burst out with a powerful punch that hissed the air, as if begging for mercy. Before the fist arrived, the fierce wind of the fist had already rushed towards his face first. In the face of Shihoin Yoruichi's lunge jab, Lan Yan didn't even get up from the ground, and still maintained the posture of sitting cross-legged, but with a slight twist of his neck, he staggered away from the thrusting fist. Snort. Seeing this, Shihoin Yoruichi snorted softly, and the right hand that came straight out, first turned fist into claw, and then took advantage of the momentum to grab Lan Yan's sideways face. With this claw, even a piece of hard granite would be like tofu dregs, and 5 finger holes would be pierced on the spot. Call out. Whether it's punches or claws, Lan Yan still didn't get up, let alone intercept, and still follow the strong wind caused by the grabbing and tearing. His neck was slightly tilted back, and with the smallest movement, he avoided Shihoin Yoruichi's onslaught again. I'll see how you hide. A trace of dissatisfaction flashed across Shihoin Yoruichi's eyes, and when the sole of his foot stepped on the ground, he rose up like a sickle and swept towards Lan Yan's chest. If this kick is implemented, even a solid iron pillar can only be swept away by the middle. However, what happened next stunned her. I saw that Lan Yan's upper body was like a boneless soft-skinned snake, facing her knife legs and sweeping kicks. His body was like a twisting and twisting python, and staggered her attack again in a way that violated human mechanics. 3 tricks. While admiring Shihoin Yoruichi's stunned expression, Lan Yan raised his hand and probed for a finger, like a bullet fired from a chamber, struck by lightning. So fast. Shihoin Yoruichi didn't care about being horrified by Lan Yan's incomparably weird white hits technique just now, and hurriedly kicked off the ground and retreated. At the same time, his hands rested on the ground, his lumbar spine swayed. While retreating, he rolled and somersaulted at the same time, showing his incredible flexibility and waist strength to the fullest, vividly. Want to go? Seeing this, Lan Yan spread his feet apart, stomped the soles of his feet on the ground dozens of times in an instant, turned into a black shadow and jumped out, catching up with Shihoin Yoruichi instantly like a ghost. What kind of footwork are you doing? In the entire Soul Society, only the Shunpo of our Shihoin family can perform Shunpo without using Reiatsu, just by the spirit itself. How could you have such a skill? The more Shihoin Yoruichi watched, the more frightened he became. In order to prove how powerful her white hits are, she relied entirely on the strength of her spirit body in the fight just now, and did not use a single bit of Reiatsu. Same. She could also perceive that whether Lan Yan was dodging, attacking, or chasing, all of them relied on the power of the spirit body itself, and did not use Reiatsu. But precisely because of this, she was even more shocked. Seeing that the essence of Lan Yan is getting closer and closer to the Shinigami pie on his chest, Shihoin Yoruichi no longer dares to regard Lan Yan as a rookie who has never been exposed to white hits. At this moment, she revealed White Hits and Shunpo, the secret biography of the Shihoin family. Still didn't use Reiatsu, but relying on her special breathing method and body control ability, she stomped on her feet one after another. The combination of weird footwork and body skills split into 4 in an instant, turning into 4 identical Shihoins. Yoruichi flashed away in 4 directions at the same time. Call out. Seeing this, there was no surprise on Lan Yan's face. A nobleman who has been passed down for thousands of years, and who is still dominated by weapons, white hits, and Shunpo, how could he have no background? Don't talk about it, it's just a secret footwork known to the world, Saifeng. As someone who has read the original work, he only knows 1 trick. Empty cicada. I don't know about the other 3 tricks, and I don't even know about the deeper hidden ones. How about it? Am I qualified to be your white hits teacher? This is the secret footwork, one of the 4 Maple Mirage. If you want to learn, call me teacher, I can teach you. A strange scene appeared. The 4 Shihoin Yoruichi turned their heads together and said to Lan Yan in unison. This kind of shadow clone, which is difficult to distinguish between true and false, is actually achieved by stealth footwork. No wonder even the Tsunere Byakuya Kuchiki couldn't help but learn the trick of empty cicada, which he repeatedly used to save his life at critical moments. You said, is it possible to attack 4 clones at once? Lan Yan stood still and did not pursue, but chuckled lightly, then lifted her right foot from the ground, like a spinning top, and swept across the air towards the 4 Shihoin Yoruichi. Call out. With a sharp whistling sound, a vacuum slash without any Reiatsu fluctuations swept out, like a crescent moon, catching up with the 4 Shihoin Yoruichi in an instant. What? Shihoin Yoruichi quickly leaned back, dodging with one arched foot, letting the slash almost brush his body and fly over his head. At the same time, she stepped on the ground with both feet, and her body maintained the posture of an arched bridge. She was ejected into the air and continued to distance herself from Lan Yan. However, When she was in midair, a hand suddenly came out from behind, 5 fingers like steel claws, clasped the back of her neck, and lifted her up. When Shihoin Yoruichi was stunned for a while, and then twisted his body and limbs to struggle. However, she was like a cat being strangled by the back of the neck, it didn't work at all. Hateful. After struggling to no avail, Shihoin Yoruichi could only stop with a displeased face, then turned his head and looked behind him. Seeing this, he was immediately stunned. What came into view was Lan Yan holding the back of her neck with one hand, while stepping on the air, like stepping on an invisible ladder, walking on the ground in midair. You can stay in the air without Reiatsu. How is it possible? What kind of footwork is this? Also, the slash you performed just now, as well as the fast-moving footwork, and the weird twisting body dodging technique, all have no Reiatsu. Where did you learn this exquisite and boundless white hits? The scene in front of him stunned Shihoin Yoruichi. Shinigami can't fly, but with the help of Reiatsu, they can fly through the air. But the problem is from the beginning to the end, she didn't feel the slightest Reiatsu when Lan Yan used white hits. The fledgling white hits. It's called Shinigami 6 styles. Want to learn? Call me teacher, I will teach you. Looking at Shihoin Yoruichi's blank look, Lan Yan couldn't help laughing and teasing. No matter how free and easy Shihoin Yoruichi was, he was angry when Lan Yan used what he had just teased the other party to tease himself in turn, but his teeth were itching for a while, but his heart was itching for a while. As the young patriarch of Shihoin, she has been exposed to the top white hits and shunpo cultivation since she was a child. She has never seen such exquisite white hits and shunpo. But Lan Yan's newly created white hits is really amazing. It is different from the traditional white hits system of Soul Society, which really makes her very happy. But thinking that I just got into Heiko just now, to be the teacher of the other party, and even made fun of it, but now it's the other way around, it's really embarrassing. After all, today is really embarrassing. Lan Yan read the white hits book, and then the white hits that he created, actually crushed the white hits that he had practiced since he was a child. This makes Shihoin Yoruichi feel ashamed to teach people. I am even more embarrassed to say that I want to learn. Finger pistol, shaved, moonwalk, paper arts, tempest kick, and iron body. A total of 6 tricks. This is Shinigami 6 forms. After seeing the eagerness in Shihoin Yoruichi's eyes, and the look of wanting to learn but unable to lose face, Lan Yan smiled inwardly, and then loosened the back of the opponent's fate, and then took the essence of the Shinigami 6 styles, eloquently. A set of Shinigami 6 styles was just created by white hits after reading the textbooks of Spiritual Arts Academy, and he was really worried about it. Since Shihoin Yoruichi wanted to learn, he was not stingy. It's just about Catwoman's temper, and all kinds of help and care these days, intentionally or unintentionally. A set of the original Shinigami 6 poses, harvesting a future Flash goddess, helping her to be tied to my chariot, and sitting firmly in my arms. Worth it. Sure enough, it's white hits in a departure from the traditional genre of Soul Society. How heaven-defying is Lan Yan's talent? Zanpakudo, Reiatsu, Kendo, Kido, Shunpo, white hits, and every ability of Shinigami are all heaven-defying, without any partiality. It's almost like God chasing food. When Shihoin Yoruichi heard this, he didn't speak, but his ears perked up very honestly. After seeing Lan Yan explain the 6 Shinigami poses from the beginning to the end without any privacy, she felt both embarrassed, sweet and moved. Although, she herself sends warmth to Lan Yan every day. Same today. She came here specifically to force Shihoin's white hits and shunpo to the other party, but these are all things she can get at her fingertips, and she doesn't care at all. But what about Lan Yan? Born in Rukongai, he created the amazing 6-style Shinigami, which is an extremely precious existence, but when he was ashamed and hard to speak, he did not hesitate to teach it all. This contrast, it made her heart throb, as if she had been hit hard, and her heart was in a mess. No wonder you don't like my white hits. According to the knowledge of white hits in the textbook, I casually created a set of white hits, except that it cannot be used with Reiatsu, and other aspects are not inferior to the secret body skills that my Shihoin family has passed down from generation to generation and passed down for thousands of years. Even Reiatsu's mediocre Shinigami, as long as you have learned all the 6 Shinigami moves from you, you will immediately have impressive combat power. After listening to Lan Yan's explanation of the 6 Shinigami poses, Shihoin Yoruichi suddenly looked sluggish. Not only because the most proud white hits and Shunpo were crushed, but also because she originally thought that she could help Lan Yan. I never thought that white hits didn't teach it, but instead I prostituted a set of Shinigami 6 poses for free. This made her feel like Lan Yan's back, getting farther and farther away from her, making it difficult to grasp. You can't say that. Your white hits still have some saving grace. Lan Yan saw that Catwoman, who was full of energy on weekdays, looked sluggish at the moment, so she had to say something against her will. Right, you also think there is something to be desired. Here, let me show you my white hits and Shunpo. This is the full set of secret footwork Saifeng. If you learn it, this is not a teaching, but an exchange. When Shihoin Yoruichi heard this, he immediately recovered a lot of energy, and then he didn't care whether Lan Yan learned it or not. In short, she just beat all the secret footwork Saifeng one time. She doesn't mind Lan Yan teaching herself, but she doesn't want to be underestimated by the other party, thinking that she is here to take advantage. Give the secret footwork Saifeng to Lan Yan. It is not a free prostitution Shinigami 6 styles, but an exchange. From Mirage to Empty Cicada, without reservation. It can be said that she will do it all. After seeing Shihoin's idea, although Lan Yan didn't intend to learn it, he didn't mind listening to it. If it is to teach him, with the proud temperament of his own white hits, he will definitely not accept it. After all, the reason why he asked for leave and didn't attend Shiba's single-minded white hits class was purely because he was too proud of his white hits and didn't accept any teaching, saying that he could practice unparalleled gymnastics just by self-study. If it's interchangeable, it's different. In addition, Shihoin Yoruichi's self-esteem will be frustrated, which is not conducive to sitting in his arms. Lan Yan still listened to the whole process, until Shihoin Yoruichi hollowed out the foundation of white hits and Shunpo of Saifeng's family. Your white hits said that although Shihuin's family's secret footwork and physical skills are not enough for him, there are still some bright spots. After he borrowed, sorted out, summarized, and modified and fused on the basis of the original Shinigami 6 styles, successfully created, White Hits Shinigami 6 Form 1.0 version, which is suitable for both spirit bodies and Reiatsu. Shinigami 6 Styles 1.0, Fist Spear, Razor, Swift Axe, Golden Body, Cloud Walk, Mirage. As expected, White Hits does not accept the teachings of others, and he is not allowed to accept the teachings of others, but the exchange of physical skills does not count. Especially when he saw that Lan Yan had just created the Shinigami 6 forms, which defeated Shihoin Yoruichi. Not only did he feel good, but he even offered Lan Yan a set of revised and more perfect Shinigami 6 forms 1.0 on the spot. Unlike Reiatsu's original version of Shinigami 6 forms, which only apply to astral powers. This 1.0 version can be used with the spirit body or with Reiatsu, and the power of Reiatsu is several times stronger than that of the spirit body alone. After all, the ability created by Shinigami's Zonquan Zugi around Reiatsu is the main body. Although it can be used without Reiatsu, its ability is greatly reduced. Similarly, Shihoin Yoruichi's White Hits and Shunpo are the same, only with Reiatsu can they be used to their full potential. In terms of production capacity, White Hits is definitely the strongest in Zonquan Zugi. Seeing his own White Hits, creating 2 sets of physical skills in one day, Lan Yan couldn't help sighing in his heart. Although the 1.0 version of the Shinigami 6 forms is a revision and upgrade of the original version of the Shinigami 6 forms, the difference between the 1.0 version and the original version is definitely not just the name difference, and the ability to use Reiatsu to increase the power of the Shinigami 6 forms. The 1.0 version of the Shinigami 6 forms is completely upgraded from the inside out in terms of the essence of the ability. Such as Yunbu and Moonwalk. The original version of Moonwalk can only walk in the air by stepping on the air to generate air force. The 1.0 version of Yunbu uses Reiatsu as the cloud, so that it can walk on the clouds and fly against the wind. The former is for running, the latter is for flying. It's not the same at all. Lan Yan, what's on your mind? Is it the secret footwork, and what parts of Saifeng White Hits did not understand? Shihoin Yoruichi couldn't help asking when he saw that Lan Yan suddenly became quiet without saying a word. No, didn't you just say that the only shortcoming of Shinigami 6 forms is that you can't increase the power of White Hits by using Reiatsu? I'm just here to figure it out. Lan Yan heard the words and said casually. Then what? A familiar feeling rose in Shihuan Yoruichi's heart. She already had a hunch what would happen next. I heard you tell about White Hits and Shunpo of Saifeng's family, and I gained a little bit. So, I revised it. Another set of Shinigami 6 style version 1.0 has been created. Lan Yan said in an ordinary tone. Start. Shihuan Yoruichi gritted his teeth. More than once, after experiencing the unreasonable talent of the other party from Lan Yan, she never doubted the authenticity of Lan Yan's words at all. And so it is. From now on, the last thing she wants to hear is the word, creative creation. Because, it was this word that made Shihuan Yoruichi feel that when he came here today, he just put his face in front of Lan Yan and forced him to reach out and beat him up. Suddenly, she thought of Hiriko Shinji, and also gritted her teeth, turning into pity. I just came to teach White Hits, and I was rubbed on the ground by Lan Yan's talent, not to mention Hiriko Shinji who was fighting with Lan Yan. Are you okay? Lan Yan saw Shihuan Yoruichi gritted his teeth suddenly, and showed pity on his face. Fine, I just couldn't help but think, Hiriko Shinji is really a warrior. Without a few hundred years of cerebral thrombosis, I would never do such a stupid thing as an appointment with you. Shihuan Yoruichi shook his head, the pity flowing in his beautiful eyes became more and more intense. A month? No. As far as Lan Yan's heaven-defying understanding and aptitude are concerned, just studying at Spiritual Arts Academy for 10.5 months can make Hiriko Shinji doubt his life. After Lan Yan heard this, he just smiled without saying a word, and didn't make any answer. Hiriko Shinji. This name had long been forgotten by him. Who will remember the ants in their entirety and consider their thoughts? All he has to do is decide the other party's outcome when needed. Time flies, fleeting. It has been a full month since Lan Yan enrolled in Spiritual Arts Academy. After taking a leave of absence from the White Hits class, and knowing from Shihuan Yoruichi that Lan Yan's White Hits talent is not inferior to Zanpakuto and Zanzaohui, Shiba never asked Lan Yan to attend the class. Even with a wave of his hand, he took the initiative to grant the other party more than 20 days of vacation, allowing him to practice on his own. Obviously, Shiba Yixin already had a clear and definite cognition. Letting a genius like Lan Yan, who has never been seen in 1,000 years, take classes step by step like others, will only slow down his growth. Zanpakuto, Kendo, Kido, Shunpo. After taking a class each, Shiba just let it go and let Lan Yan dominate the little time left in Spiritual Arts Academy by himself. Until today. That is to say, Lan Yan applied to Spiritual Arts Academy for early graduation, and the two met again. However, it wasn't just Shiba Yixin who was present, there were also some chief executives, vice captains, and even Captain Guding who had heard the news. Should I apply for early graduation within 1 month of enrollment? This is too fast. Spiritual Arts Academy has never existed in 2,000 years. But, the graduation requirements of the first class are different from those of other classes. It is extremely difficult. I only practice for 1 month. Can I graduate? It should be no problem, because I heard that this student is not simple. In a kendo class, he once defeated a guard captain and nailed him to the wall of the kendo hall. Hiss. What? This. If it's true, it's understandable that he will graduate early. Inquiry Spiritual Arts Academy has produced a Shinigami genius that has never been seen in 2000. The vice captains and chief officers present exchanged information with colleagues who are familiar with each other and shared information. Master Zanpakuto without a sealed state, and learn Shikai instantly. Learn Bakudo and Hado up to size 60 just by looking at the Kido encyclopedia once. In the Kendo class, he even defeated a guard captain. Even though the deeds that have been spread are not complete, they still made the Gotei Shinigami present dumbfounded. Because they knew that if the rumors were true, the students who applied for early graduation today would have completely surpassed themselves and others in strength. Look, even the guard captain is here. It's Captain Unohana, she's actually here. There's also Captain Jashiro and the leader of Band Kyo. Wait, look, that's Captain Yamamoto. Is this really a graduation assessment? Not the coronation ceremony of the captain of the court. As the assessment time for Lan Yan's early graduation is getting closer, the guard captains have also arrived one after another. First, Unohana Yakiryu, then Jashiro Yukitaki and Kyoraku Shunsui, and finally even Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni, who is the captain, also came to the examination site in person. This scene directly caused an uproar in the entire Spiritual Arts Academy. Even the captain is here. Seeing this, Shiba, who was in charge of the assessment, was also quite surprised. Although the number of guard captains present was not large, each of them was a heavyweight existence. For example, the 8,000 streams of flowers. Ordinary Shinigami, and even some young Kote captains, only think that the other party is the captain of the medical team, but in fact, they are existences second only to Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni. Hieraku Shunsui and Jashiro Yukitaki were the first Spiritual Arts Academy students to become captain guards. At last, needless to say, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni, the captain of Gote 13, the strongest Shinigami of the millennium. Innumerable halos of glory added to the body. Such a group of strength, qualifications, prestige and status guard captains actually assembled and formed a team to watch the graduation assessment of a Spiritual Arts Academy student. Why didn't this surprise Shiba wholeheartedly? We just came to watch the ceremony today. Captain Yixin, don't bother. Just follow the steps and just conduct the assessment. Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni found a place and stood proudly with a cane in his hand. The other captains stood beside him. In addition to Unohana Yakiryu, who has already experienced Lan Yan's strength, Hieraku Shunsui, Jashiro Yukitaki, and even Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni himself also frequently looked at Lan Yan. They were quite curious about what kind of height this gifted student, who was the most gifted student in the history of the Soul Society, had reached after a month of intensive training. Yes, Your Excellency Captain. Shiba nodded wholeheartedly, and then said to Lan Yan. Candidates, Lan Yan Sosuke, please come out. After hearing this, Lan Yan took Zanpakuto through the crowd and walked to the assessment site. This is a spacious grass field the size of several football fields. The early graduation assessment you applied to Spiritual Arts Academy has been approved. Because your class is a first-class class, and you are graduating early, Spiritual Arts Academy will assess you more difficultly than the normal graduation assessment. The assessment contents are Kendo, Kido, White Hits, Shunpo, Reiatsu, and Zanpakuto. After Shiba finished speaking with all his heart, he saw several Shinigami of the Kido congregation, and escorted a subordinate Mainos Grande, Killian, who was imprisoned by many Bakudo, to the scene. First round, the Kido assessment. Use Kido below size 80, including at least one of Bakudo and Hado, to defeat Killian. Shiba looked at Lan Yan wholeheartedly. Obviously. Spiritual Arts Academy does not train nerds, but Shinigami who can endure blood and fire. Especially the first class, which is regarded as the cradle of captains. What's the use of learning Zanquan Zugi and Zanpakuto liberation, but being in a hurry in the battle with Mainos Grande and unable to show any strength? Even if the Soul Society is rotten, old-fashioned, and stiff, it is impossible to commit such a stupid thing. I see. Lan Yan nodded. The content of the examination is not surprising. Unlock the seal. As soon as Shiba finished his words, several Kido Shinigami immediately released the restraint on Killian. Roar. Killian, who has been imprisoned for many days, is like a tiger in a cage. Once he escapes from prison, he immediately shows his ferocity. Chi. I saw him open his bloody mouth wide, scarlet rays of light bloomed, and the powerful Reiatsu gathered quickly, forming a Reiatsu sphere in an instant. Sure enough, it's Sero. The Kido on the 80th, no matter if it is Hado or Bakudo, for the students of Spiritual Arts Academy, they must be fully chanted before they can be cast, but the Sero of Mainos Grande is different. It does not need to be chanted, it only needs to be condensed to be released, and the time is doubled. Less than a second. Does he have time to chant Numen? Seeing Killian get out of trouble for a moment, he immediately condensed Sero, and Shinigami, who was watching the ceremony, immediately looked at Lan Yan. Daily Kido cultivation is completely different from Shizan. Mainos Grande is not a Kido pile, it moves, it attacks, it kills. Not only will it not stand still, but it will give you time to chant Jowian, and even take the initiative to attack. Some Gote Shinigami who have come to watch the graduation assessment often know it well. In the past, there were many students with outstanding talents. In the first battle, because of their busy hands and psychological pressure, they couldn't get their due performance at all. It's too late, but it's fast. From getting out of trouble, roaring, to Sero condensing, the whole process took less than 3 seconds. At this time, Killian's eyes flashed fiercely, and immediately fixed on Lan Yan, who was the closest to him, and could even be said to be standing in front of him. Bang! Accompanied by a loud thunder-like explosion on the ground, a blood-colored Reiatsu beam pierced through the air and shot towards Lan Yan. 81 of Bakudo splitting void. Facing the blood-red Sero who was attacking through the air, Lan Yan's eyes were calm, and he didn't even look at Killian in front of him, he just turned his head and walked away. When the blood-red Sero was only about 1 meter away from his back, a translucent defensive wall rose from the ground like a majestic mountain, blocking the oncoming Sero. Boom! The powerful Reiatsu explosion spread, blasting the sky with thick smoke. But after the explosion, the walls of the splitting void remained motionless. Roar! Seeing this, Killian, with a barely intelligent brain, let him condense Sero again. Hados 88. Flying dragons attacking thieves and shaking the sky. Feeling the wave of Reiatsu coming from behind again, Lan Yan didn't turn his head. Just as Killian's Sero was about to condense into shape, the ground under his feet suddenly shook. As the crack spread out in all directions like a python, a terrifying Reiatsu breath rose from the crack. Immediately, the azure blue brilliance bloomed wantonly, and a huge tower rose from the ground, like a volcanic eruption, and magma spewed out from under Killian's feet, completely submerging Killian, who was huge and like a hill. Rumbling. In a sound sweeping all directions, the loud noise spread throughout the Spiritual Arts Academy. In an instant, the terrifying Reiatsu beam vaporized Killian and his finally condensed Sero, turning them into spirit particles, and then continued upwards until they sank into the clouds, tearing apart the clouds above the Spiritual Arts Academy. A gigantic hole burst out, like a pillar of heaven, which disappeared after connecting the sky with the ground. Splitting void at number 81. Number 80's Phylong striking thief shocking thunder cannon. Oh my god. He was able to abandon the chant and use Bakudo and Kido above 80, and the power is so terrifying. Is this really a newcomer who has only been enrolled in Spiritual Arts Academy for a month? Even the guard captains can't do more than that. Seeing this scene, the Guti Shinigami onlookers were all stunned. Jingle, did you see it? Jashiro Yukitaki looked shocked, and couldn't help turning his head to ask Kiraku Shunsui beside him. Ordinary Shinigami chiefs and even the vice captain only saw Lan Yan abandoning the chant and cast Kido above 80, but as the Shinigami captain, he saw more. I see it. Not only did he abandon the chant, but he was able to modify Kido's form at will. Flying dragons attacking thieves and shaking the sky and thunder cannons, this is the captain level Shinigami who can abandon the chant and retain most of the power. But this young man named Lan Yan not only achieved what only the captain-level Shinigami can do things, even go a step further, to change the form of a Hado personification of number 88. Kiraku Shunsui lowered the hat on his head so that no one could see the shock in his eyes. Hado at number 88. He can also use it, and even boasts that he can be stronger than the current Lan Yan in terms of destructive power, but he can't change Kido's form and attack mode. For example, this is a high-level Hado cast with one hand or two hands, and he can't change this rule, because this is the form and mode of the Hado. But what about Lan Yan? According to the actual combat, rewrite the shape and mode of the flying dragon and the thief shocking thunder cannon as you like. From casting it with hands, to releasing it at the enemy's feet, like a volcano erupting, magma gushes out. Make people hard to guard against. This kind of thing cannot be done simply because Reiatsu is high and strong, but one must have extremely high Kido attainments. Lan Yan Sosuke, I'm not as good as you. Kiraku Shunsui was originally interested in Lan Yan, whom Jashiro Yukitaki talked about a lot. Seeing this, he did not live up to his expectations, and even far exceeded them. At least, in terms of Kido attainments, he is above him. Amazing. Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni's slightly narrowed eyes widened a little, revealing a hint of surprise. He has lived for thousands of years. The so-called geniuses I have seen are as numerous as the stars in the sky. But if he had to search for a genius Shinigami whom he had seen for thousands of years in the long river of memory, there was none that could rival Lan Yan. Once again amazed by Lan Yan's talent, he couldn't help recalling the night when he first met Lan Yan. Do you regret it? Yes. Although Chojiro Sasaki explained it afterwards, every time Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni was amazed by Lan Yan, he would inevitably feel a little bit of regret in his heart. No wonder he doesn't take the name, Kenpachi, seriously. It turns out that in terms of Kido's attainments, it is not inferior to his achievements in Kendo. Lan Yan Sosuke, Unozawa Yakiryu was both surprised and stunned. No wonder, the name, Kenpachi, that everyone longs for falls on Lan Yan, but he treats it like nothing. Don't care at all. Teacher Yixin, do I pass the test like this? Lan Yan walked up to Shiba Yixin, who was still in shock and hadn't recovered. Aren't you talking nonsense? Shiba listened intently and gave Lan Yan an annoyed look. He only used Lan Yan to use Kido below 80, and did not let the opponent use more than 80, and he still gave up the chant. Such hado. Even he is not sure that he can do better than Lan Yan. When I think of myself as the head of the branch house of the Shiba family, I have been practicing Shinigami since I was a child, but in the end, I am not as good as a boy who has only practiced for a month. At this moment, there is even a feeling that I have practiced on dogs all these years. Fine, this time with the Manos Grande as the target, not the Kido stake. Otherwise, I will pay again. Shiba Yixin suddenly felt lucky. Fortunately, Lan Yan did not graduate normally, but graduated early, and so much earlier. Otherwise, according to the normal graduation assessment, it would be fighting against Kido, not Killian. Next game, sword assessment. Similar to the Kido test, defeating a Kido with Kendo. Seeing that the Shinigami of the Kido crowd brought another Killian, Shiba immediately announced the content of the second assessment. Why don't you go there? Seeing Lan Yan still standing beside him, Shiba couldn't help asking. It's not necessary anymore. When Lan Yan was speaking, he noticed that the Shinigami of the Kido congregation had untied the Bakudo restraint on Killian, and raised his palms without haste, palms facing upwards. Clang. The sound of the sword Ming resounded through the sky. The majestic sword pressure spreads in all directions. All the people present felt their whole bodies, as if a sharp knife had been scraped against their skin, and they felt their hair stand on end. At the same time, Killian, who had just escaped from Bakudo, was just about to condense Sero, and 8 Reiatsu long swords had descended from the sky, piercing his head, body, feet and other parts, and nailed him to the ground. Not the one that nailed Hiriko Shinji to the Kendo gym. Seeing this with all his heart, Shiba's pupils constricted suddenly. At that time, although he arrived late, he also learned what happened from Shiba Kyan and others afterwards, and learned the whole process of the fight between Lan Yan and Hiriko Shinji. It's not so much a fight, but a unilateral crush. But 3 knives, Hiriko Shinji is like a picture scroll, hung on the wall of the Kendo hall. Compared to more than half a month ago, Kendo has improved to a higher level. His potential, his growth, isn't there a bottleneck? Unohana Yakiru touched even deeper. Half a month ago, she was defeated by the combination of the 8 Reiatsu long swords in front of her. When I saw it again, I immediately noticed that Lan Yan's control over this Kendo was stronger than when he fought her. Jashiro, you were right. Even if I let the old man teach now, there is nothing I can teach him. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni glanced at Jashiro Yukitaki, remembering what the other party said to him that day. How long is this? It's only a month. The Kido and Kendo shown by Lan Yan, who applied for early graduation, have already surpassed the average Shinigami captain, and even the captain of the team felt that he had no ability to teach Lan Yan. Captain Yixin, is it the same for Shunpo, White Hits, and Kendo? Lan Yan lowered his palms and scattered the 8 Reiatsu swords that had crucified Killian to the ground, and then asked Shiba with all his heart. Quote. Shiba opened his mouth wholeheartedly, not knowing what to say. He felt that, judging from Lan Yan's strength, all assessments were superfluous. Not to mention the assessment for early graduation, if the Soul Society has the assessment for being promoted to the captain of the court, Lan Yan can pass it. Correct. I almost forgot. After this kid graduated ahead of schedule, the next step is to become the captain of the court guard. As for Hiriko Shinji's disagreement, he felt that the other party would agree soon. No assessment, just pass. Except for Zanpakuto. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni raised his crutches and lightly stood on the ground, and everyone looked at him. Kido are longer and stronger than larger Kido. Kendo is stronger than first generation Kenpachi. Such a genius, he really didn't believe that the other party would pull his hips on Shunpo and white hits. After hearing the decision of Yamamoto Yuanryasai Shigekuni, the captain of the court, the vice captain, and even the chief executives present also took it for granted. Yes, Captain. Shiba nodded wholeheartedly, and several Kido members stepped back immediately. When they came back again, there was a Shinigami and a Manos Grande beside them. Deputy Kido Chief, Hashigan, and an Ijuka's class Manos Grande imprisoned by Bakudo. He is the content of your assessment. An Ijuka's who invaded the Soul Society not long ago. For others, this is the most difficult assessment, but for you, it is also equivalent to going through the motions. It is not so much an assessment as it is a proof that you have mastered the liberation of Zanpakuto. Shiba looked around the audience wholeheartedly, seeing that the chief executive and deputy team were no longer in the minority. If you don't want anyone to see your Zanpakuto Shikai, I can clear the field for you, leaving only the Gote captain. They must be kept, because if you want to take over as the captain of the 5th team, you need to prove that you have mastered the liberation of Zanpakuto. This is the rule of Seraiti, and the reason why the captain retains this assessment. Don't worry about it. The captains of the court all know each other's Shikai. Of course, how much you know, whether it's true or not, then let it go. Do you understand what I mean? Lan Yan. He lowered his voice and asked Lan Yan. It doesn't matter, let's start directly. Lan Yan nodded knowingly, but he didn't let Shiba focus on clearing the field. Just because of his Zanpakuto Shikai and Bankai abilities, there are too many. Even Shikai is no longer a minority. Not to mention that no one knows about his Zanpakuto Candle Yin, which is the strongest Zanpakuto in the Light and Dark department that Soul Society has never seen before. The ability of the Light department alone is diverse. It doesn't matter if you expose one item casually. What's more, some Zanpakuto abilities, even if you know it, you can't target them, let alone crack them, and you will only become more desperate when you match them. Candle Yin is like this. Untie. As soon as Shiba finished his words, Hashigan released Ijukas from the prison. Shinigami, I want you to pay the price for despising me. How dare you humiliate me copper like that? The Manos Grande who can evolve the island Ijukas, without exception, have a high degree of intelligence and emotion. Copper listened to the conversation between Lan Yan and Shiba just now, and naturally understood the purpose of staying behind after being captured alive. As soon as the restraint was released, a powerful Reiatsu burst out of his body. Although they went straight to Lan Yan, the Shinigami who watched nearby still felt strong discomfort. Many of the Shinigami below the vice captain showed fear on their faces. Sudden, a voice rang in Copper's ear. It should be said that you'd better not underestimate me. Immediately afterwards, an overwhelming wave of Reiatsu first completely dispersed the Manos Grande Reiatsu in all directions with an unrivaled and powerful posture, and then oppressed Copper like a mountain top. Click. One after another, the sound of bones trembling rang out one after another. When everyone heard it, they immediately realized that it was coming from the Ijukas named Copper. Pata. Everyone chased after the sound, looked around, and immediately saw a scene that they will never forget. I saw that after breaking free from Bakudo's imprisonment, he showed Reiatsu's Ijukas, which frightened even the chief officers. At this time, his whole body was tense, his face was pale, his body trembled, and his knees sank. Pata. With the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground, his knees fell to the ground. Grunt. Hiss. Seeing this scene, except for Captain Hutting, all the vice captains and chief executives were all stunned. Some swallowed saliva involuntarily. Some gasped in shock. With Reiatsu alone, an Ijukas that only a sub-captain level Shinigami can deal with, is crushed to the ground. How can this be? It's no wonder he's been named the Spiritual Arts Academy's greatest talent since 2000. Lan Yan Sosuke, he and we are not Shinigami of the same dimension at all. Seeing that Lan Yan, with Reiatsu alone, crushed Copper, who was still invincible just now, to his knees, unable to move, the deputy team and chief executive who came to manage him were shocked. Although both are Shinigami, they are not in the same dimension at all. Don't worry, it will be over soon. Lan Yan strolled in the courtyard and walked up to Copper. Sensing the approach of the man who made him fear, the trembling of his whole body became more and more obvious. Don't be afraid, you who are flying insects can die under my Zanpakuto Shikai. Shouldn't you be honored? Lan Yan expressed relief, and then placed a finger on the center of Copper's eyebrows who were pinned to the ground by Reiatsu. Close your eyes, Zuin. With the fall of the liberation words that seem to be calm and humble, black mist rises from the fingertips. The black mist rotates slightly and spirals, like a dark uzumaki the size of a palm, but it bursts out with infinite gravity. The nearby space ripples and tosses visible to the naked eye suddenly appeared, and even the light that could travel through every corner of the Soul Society could not escape, and was involved in this extremely deep darkness. Uzumaki can't even handle the space. Not even light can escape. Such a terrifying gravitational force, not to mention an Ijuka's Manos Grande who was already crushed to the ground by Lanyan's Reiatsu. Chi-chi, under the sound of creepy meat grinding and screams that stopped abruptly. As Ijuka's Manos Grande, Copper was wrapped around Lanyan's fingertips one by one from the head, to the neck, to the body, and finally to the feet. The palm-sized black Uzumaki was involved in it, and then swallowed one by one, completely shattered. The steel skin that is so strong that it can withstand the damage of Zanpakuto is useless. After a while, Lanyan dissipated the dark Uzumaki, and withdrew the substance that had just reached Ijuka's Manos Grande's brow. The folds of the space are smoothed out again, and the distorted and inescapable light is restored to freedom. Everything was restored to its original appearance, as if it had not been damaged. Only the Ijuka's Manos Grande disappeared after being swallowed by the dark Uzumaki. Not to mention broken limbs, not even a little bit of spirit remains. It was like matter being sucked into a black hole, crushed by the terrifying gravitational force, not to mention recovering, even a trace could not be preserved. Open your eyes to the light. Close your eyes for darkness. There are two sides to the knife. All are the strongest. Zanpakuto is the combination of the strongest dark system and the strongest light system. This is Lanyan's candlestick. This is Lanyan's Zanpakuto Shikai. Is this the elemental Zanpakuto? It looks like it should be dark. The curling darkness is terrifying, and just looking at it from a distance makes me feel uneasy. That knife is not easy. That's Zanpakuto, the most talented spiritual arts academy since 2000. Can it be simple? Witness the liberation of Zanpakuto by Lanyan. Although it was only a small attempt to liberate the dark side of Candle Yin, the ephemeral darkness had already made the Shinigami present feel palpitations and uneasiness. Especially Yamamoto Genyanagi Shigekuni, who also holds the strongest Zanpakuto of the Heat Department. Ryujin Jaka, you want to tell me about that knife? So that's the case, even you feel jealous. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni only looked sideways at first. After all, he had seen too many Zanpakuto over the millennia. The ability is weird, all-powerful, even, like his Ryujin Jaka, the one who holds the strongest name in a certain line of Zanpakuto. He has seen them all, not a few. However, Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni, who originally only looked sideways and paid more attention, heard Ryujin Jaka's voice telling him about Lanyan's Zanpakuto. His eyes immediately changed. That was shocking. That is dignified. That is fear. Who is Ryujin Jaka? Not only is it the oldest and most powerful Zanpakuto in the Heat Department, but it also has the strongest attack power in the Soul Society. It symbolizes the powerful existence like the sun. But such a Zanpakuto, at this time, constantly conveyed to him his fear of Lanyan's Candle Yin. How could this not move Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni? Teacher Yixin, should I pass the examination like this? Lanyan put the Zanpakuto back into the scabbard and strolled to Shiba Yixin. I declare, Lanyan Sosuke, pass the graduation assessment and allow early graduation. Shiba stared intently at the Zanpakuto that was back in the sheath on Lanyan's waist. Although he didn't have Ryujin Jaka tell him about the horror of candle shadow like Yamamoto Genryusai Shigeguni, but his keen intuition told him that this knife is not simple. The water inside is very deep. As Shiba insisted on announcing that Lanyan would graduate early, a faculty member immediately came over with a brand new Death Fighter outfit. From now on, you are an official Shinigami. You can wait for the first team of Gote to arrange for you, or you can take the initiative to submit an application to a certain team of Gote 13. Although I know that your heart belongs to you, but I still want to ask again, do you want to consider my 10th squad? Shiba still does not give up, and invites Lanyan for the last time. Captain Yixin, I don't approve of your invitation. Without waiting for Lanyan to speak, At this time, Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni came over and directly rejected Shiba Yixen's proposal, not allowing him to invite Lan Yan to join the Juban team. Just because. Lan Yan Sosuke, would you like to come to the old man's first team and serve as the vice captain? Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni looked at Lan Yan, and all the Shinigami present were stunned as soon as he opened his mouth. Graduation as the vice captain. Looking at the history of Gote 13, it is not that it has never happened, but it has never happened to join a team as a vice captain upon graduation. In other teams, the vice captain is also the vice captain. True to its name, status, fame, power, and strength are all below the captain. But a team is different. The first team has 2 vice captains. Although it is under the jurisdiction of Yamamoto Motoyanagi, its status, rights, prestige, etc. are not under the captains of the other teams. If you are willing to come to the team, the old man will spare time every day to teach you how to practice. Yamamoto Moto Yanasai Shigekuni dropped another bombshell. In addition to Jashiro Yukitaki, who knew that Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni had long wanted to accept disciples, but because of his more conservative and rigid ideas, he missed the best time by accident, the captain of the court guard who was present was also shocked after hearing this, stunned. Compared with the power of the vice captain of a team. What really moved Captain Gote's heart was Yamamoto Yuanryusai Shigekuni's teachings, and it was the kind that he never missed every day. Thank you, Captain, for your kindness. Pity. Forgive me for not being able to accept your invitation. While everyone was still in shock, Lan Yan's words shocked everyone again. That was an invitation from the chief guard. Not only is Shuyi the deputy captain, but there is also a relationship between master and apprentice who does not have the name of master and apprentice. Even the 4 nobles will be shocked. But what about Lan Yan? He refused directly. Why? Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni was stunned. Apparently, he never thought that he would put down his dignity and be rejected by Corporal Li Xian's invitation. For thousands of years, he has always been the only one who rejects others, so there is no reason for him to be rejected. Is it because I am not strong enough? Or is the position of the vice captain of the first team not good enough? If it was more than half a month ago, I would definitely agree to join the first team without hesitation. But, now, I have a battle waiting for me that I have to meet, so please forgive me for not being able to promise you. Lan Yan was not surprised that Yamamoto Yuanyanagi would invite himself. On the contrary, he already knew and thought about the reasons for the rejection. Hiriko Shinji is the best shield. After all, although the vice captain of Team Ichiba is not as powerful as the other captains, Team Ichiba is ultimately decided by Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni. Unlike Captain Hutting, in other teams, the captain is absolutely eloquent. His character, his ability, decided that he was not suitable to stay in the first team. Instead, Aizen is a perfect fit. Fighting, appointment. This is how the same thing. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni opened his eyes slightly, revealing a trace of suspicion. Before, he sent someone to secretly monitor the Lan Yan brothers, but since Aizen set up a moving and modest character in the Spiritual Arts Academy with a wave of Kyoka Suigetsu's coquettish operations, he was also moved by Aizen's mind and strength, so he withdrew from the surveillance. A humble gentleman who is virtuous and does not ask for anything in return. How could he do something that would endanger the Soul Society? Your Excellency, Captain, the matter is like this. Shiba focused on noticing that Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni's expression did not seem to be fake, so he stepped forward to lure him away some time ago. Hiriko Shinji sent the deputy captain, and then came to the Mao Kendo gym, pretending to be a teacher, threatening Aizen every step of the way, and finally as his elder brother, Lan Yan defended his younger brother by nailing him to the wall of the Kendo hall with one sword, etc., one by one. Presumptuous. The more Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni listens, the more exciting his expression becomes. Especially after listening to Shiba's single-minded talk about Hiriko Shinji's defeat, he actually wanted to continue to use the power of the captain of the fifth team to persecute the Lan Yan brothers. After Fan Dui went to the appointment for a battle, he could no longer hold back his inner anger and shouted loudly. Boom! When the strongest Shinigami in the Millennium got angry, Reiatsu burst out unintentionally, and it still erupted like a torrent, directly crushing all the seats to the ground. The Shinigami at the vice-captain level were not much better, and they fell to the ground one by one, as if they were in a sea of fire and were continuously burned. The dignified captain of the court guard does not want to promote talents, but instead repeatedly persecutes people with lofty ideals. Is Seraiti granting him captain rights just to make him act recklessly? It's just nonsense. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni became more and more angry. Originally, he regretted that because of a momentary worry that day, he missed the best opportunity to bring brother Lan Yan into the door. Now, knowing that brother Lan Yan, whom he has always wanted, is still training in the Spiritual Arts Academy, but a captain from Gote 13 came to his door for no reason and repeatedly threatened him. How can he not be angry? After all, he is the captain of the court guard. Of course, Hiriko Shinji's behavior didn't spread, but once it spread, it would be tantamount to slapping him in the face. Hiriko may have been mistaken too. What did you see wrong? The good guy Jashiro Yukitaki immediately stood up and said good things to Hiriko Shinji, but he was stopped by Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni, who was in a rage. Just because others have done what he couldn't. Just because others don't ask for anything in return and are open and upright. Just because he is narrow-minded and sees everything narrowly. He, Hiriko Shinji, is unwilling to hold an umbrella for Soul Society's Shinigami. I don't blame him. After all, a gentleman like Aizen is rare in 100 years. But he absolutely shouldn't have repeatedly targeted Aizen, and even used the captain's authority. Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni became more and more angry, and the majestic Reiatsu was already strong enough to almost materialize. This Reiatsu, it has definitely reached the category of 60 cars. Even without Shikai, without Bankai, stand on top of Shinigami. Feeling the fiery Reiatsu filling every gram of air, Lan Yan's eyes under the framed mirror immediately flashed a gleam of light. It's different from Reiatsu, the general go-to captain. The Reiatsu of Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni is not only high in strength and amazing in volume, but also extremely hot, just like a wave of flames. Obviously, thousands of years of practice and accumulation have not only allowed the strongest Shinigami of the millennium to reach the pinnacle of Shinigami in every aspect, but also integrated the characteristics of Zanpakuto into the minister of Reiatsu. In addition to being huge and thick, Reiatsu is also as hot as a flame. Incorporate the characteristics of Zanpakuto into Reiatsu. Lan Yan was thoughtful, and just had the idea of wanting to try it, when a reminder about Zanpakuto came from his ear. Your Zanpakuto said, do you still need to learn and try to integrate the characteristics of Zanpakuto into Reiatsu's skills? It's just that she has been busy comprehending and mastering Bankai's practice recently, so she has no time to be distracted. Since you are interested, she decided to take half a minute to combine Zanpakuto's force into Reiatsu. As the reminder sounded, Landu immediately noticed that the Reiatsu in his body had changed. Quality has not improved. It's still 18 chariots. That is, even if he does not liberate Zanpakuto, Reiatsu is 3 times Muguruma Kensai. But the intensity has changed. Reiatsu possesses the power characteristics of Candle Yin, namely light, CEFB, and darkness. As for the specific effect, you can only find someone to try it. Lan Yan, you don't have to go to this battle. As for Hiriko Shinji, the old man will take care of it for you. You don't need to worry about him being unfavorable to Aizen. After spouting wildly for half a minute, Yamamoto Yuanryusai Shigekuni, who was under fire pressure, turned his head and said to Lan. Your Excellency, Captain, please forgive me for offending you. I must go to this appointment. Lan Yan shook his head. How could you not go? Pulling Hiriko Shinji from the 5th Division was a plan he and Aizen had made long ago. As for the deputy captain of the first team, he must go. But it was not him who went, but after Aizen graduated, he went to Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni to serve as the deputy captain. You can't trust the old man. Yamamoto Genryusai Shigekuni frowned, and made a word for Sichuan. In Soul Society, he is the absolute authority. Regardless of what Central 46 decides, the captain can't disobey, but that's what the captain can't disobey, not him. Yamamoto Motoyanagi Shigekuni can't disobey. In fact, he is willing to abide by the instructions of Central 46, because Seraiti, and its power of rules and institutions were created by him. Of course, the rules I create will be followed by myself. Otherwise, how could other people in Seraiti, such as the Four Nobles, regard the rules formulated by Yamamoto Genryusai as insurmountable laws. May I ask Your Excellency the Captain, what do you plan to do with Captain Hiriko? Remove him as the captain of the 5th Division. Get out of Gotei 13. Lan Yan did not answer the question. Yamamoto Motoyanagisai Shigekuni fell silent. That was a guard captain. His status is even more prominent than most noble patriarchs. How can it be said that it is dismissed, and how can it be said that Gotei 13 is driven out, and Gotei 13 is driven out? In the final analysis, Hiriko Shinji's doing this is only a loss of personal morality, and it is not a violation of the rules and laws of the Soul Society. This is also his shrewdness. Even if there is a big trouble, there will be no real loss. It seems to be a verbal warning, and then a written review. Seeing this, Lan Yan understood. Everyone is the captain of the court, but one is the general captain and the other is the captain. My own people beat themselves. How could it be possible to use a heavy hand, let alone kill him at once? Your Excellency, Captain, it's not that I can't trust you, but I can't trust Captain Hiriko. You warn, you can only shock him for a while at most, can you also shock him for a lifetime? As you said, he is narrow-minded, and after being punished by you, he will only resent Aizen even more, secretly and unscrupulously revenge back. There is a saying in this world, there is only 1,000 days to be a thief. How can 1,000 days be against a thief? After Lan Yan finished speaking, he took the Siba costume, turned around and walked towards the 5th team. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.